everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the MinnMax Show, a place about games, friends, and getting better and waving profusely. I'm joined by Kyle Hilliard.
Hello.
Kelsey Lewin.
Hi.
Jacob Geller.
Moderate wealth.
And can you imagine if we had a fifth first person on this podcast, just a fantastic individual guesting? How cool would that be, Kyle?
It'd be the coolest thing ever.
I think it'd be cool to hear from a voice that I've listened to a lot on podcasts. Michael Huber from Easy Allies.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Dun, dun, dun. Huber, it's an honor to have you here, man.
Oh, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Big thing. Well, there's a lot we could talk about on this podcast, and we're going to unpack it all. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, we're talking about. Last of Us Part 2, Remastered, we're going to talk about. And when I think of those two games, I think Huber. And then we're also going to be talking about Palworld, which maybe I will learn to think of Huber associated with Palworld. We'll see. And then some great community questions in the back half of this whole show. But Huber, first things first, this feels like an offensive way to state it, but I see so many people online being like, oh, Huber's a cohort. Huber's joining MinnMax. Like, no. Huber's a guest on this podcast. Lovely to have him as a guest. And just to be very clear, you're hosting Trivia Tower for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Very
hyped
exciting.
On that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for jumping in. I mean, to take you behind the scenes a little bit, I talked to Huber about this, but like, Trivia Tower, we've been doing it for 3 years. It's a blast to do, where if you don't know, if you support MinnMax on Patreon at any tier, even the $2 tier, you can jump in and compete for prizes. This month, Huber, I guess you don't even know this. I was going to relay it to you. But you can get a code for Prince of Persia, Lost Crown, by competing and knowing a thing or two about game trivia. Or Venba, one of our favorite games from last year. And a ton of other codes that are jumbled in there as well. Ghost Runner 2 is in there. But it's been going for 3 years, and I was kind of at a point of like, I either need a break or maybe we just kind of sunset this and make it not a monthly thing anymore. And then Huber, you sent out a tweet, be like, hey, does anybody know of any like part-time hosting things? Like, oh my God, Huber and Trivia Towers are match made in heaven. That's perfect. So really, it's largely because of your tweet and then everybody tagging us in that tweet. So shout out to the community for really being the ones to connect these dots. How are you feeling about the prep for Trivia Tower happening on Monday?
Good. It's the first one, so the prep is like, I'm not like used to the prep and the rhythm of it all.
Yeah.
But I've got like pretty much everything laid out. So now I just got to like, plug everything in basically.
Yeah, it's a fun process. I don't know if you've hit this moment, but always coming up with all the questions for Trivia Tower, it reaches a point where I'm literally just looking at the ceiling being like, what game did I play about 10 years ago that I have some reference for? Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed.
I was getting out like my hard copies of stuff. Like, should I do one on this game?
Right. Yeah. You're scrambling just to find something. But just to be clear, if people want to compete in Michael Huber's first Trivia Tower ever, they can jump in at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Even at that $2 tier, it's happening Monday, January 29th at 7 p.m. Central. It happens in MinnMax's Discord, which you get access to and you support us on Patreon. If you have any questions about how that whole thing works, let us know. But Huber, don't reveal any of the answers, but do you want to reveal who the co-host is for the first episode of Michael Huber's Trivia Tower?
A person named Kyle Bossman.
There we go. The man who invented the charades category for Trivia Tower. So blame him.
About halfway through that reveal, by the way, I was like, am I?
I was also thinking the same thing.
I don't think I remember committing to that.
Surprise!
Kelsey did co-host like an early episode. That was really fun.
I'd do it again. It was fun.
Okay. Yeah, if you ever need it, Huber, there's guests all around.
It's a way to like compete without actually competing, because I can't, actually answer or win anything, but then I can just feel like, okay, how would I have done
like,
with no pressure?
I had that when someone answers it in
I
0.5 seconds.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Kelsey, to be fair, you're the wrong person to be saying that type of stuff, because when we did Trivia Tower All-Stars, the first one, I think Huber competed in it, and I think you were in the final 5, Kelsey. Like I
was in the finals.
Yeah, you were freaking crushing when you were in there with everybody, so...
It felt, I gotta say though, it felt miraculous, because the one that I barely scraped into was the first round. Like the first round was the one I think that I struggled with the most to scrape by. And then after that, I think, it came a little more naturally, but I can't remember what the last question was, but it was some game I had absolutely never played and would have not, it was like a screenshot zoom in thing, I think. And it was like, you could have given me everything, and I would have never gotten this.
But don't let that be the lesson for you watching, because if you're watching or listening, you can win this. You just need to know a couple things about video games. Really, to get out of that first floor, you just need to know one thing about one game, and it just happens to be the one, and then you can make your way out of that death zone and into the sweet Elysium known as second floor and third floor and fourth floor and fifth floor.
Don't miss your moment on that first round.
Don't miss it, everybody. So tune in. It's going to be live on MinnMax's YouTube channel. Again, jump in and compete, help support independent games media at the same time so we can afford to bring on folks like Huber to host Trivia Tower. So thanks to everybody for keeping that, what did Jim Ryan call it? The virtuous cycle alive. It's definitely appreciated. This is a weird week for games. I don't know if anybody else had this experience. I understand I maybe did more than most people because for reasons I can't get into quite yet, but Huber and I can maybe talk about in the future. We've been thinking a lot about Final Fantasy VII Remake recently. And then also this week we have the sequel to Yakuza Like a Dragon, and we have Last of Us Part 2 in again. Like, it feels like 2020 Part 2. Like, it's just a complete shift of the year and the mindset for just a lot of old memories.
Also, it's an election
back.
year, and
yes,
lots of things happening.
Absolutely, everything comes back. Yeah, but Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. I've been playing a decent bit of it. Kyle's played a little bit more than me. Huber, how much have you played of this thing?
Probably like a third of it, I'd say.
Okay, nice. And then Kelsey is a champion, and she's nearing the final third.
I'm 50 hours in. I have spent a lot of time on side quests and mini games and that sort of thing. I think Jacob is further than me. I don't know if he has more. Do you have more hours than me too?
No, that's interesting. I think I'm at like 46 hours, and I am halfway through the finale. I think I'm at a point of no return where I could finish it, and instead I'm wrapping up a bunch of side quests.
Okay, let's see. Most informed Jacob, how do you feel about it?
Big thumbs up.
Big thumbs up. Hell yeah, we did it.
Yeah, it's it's great. It is impossible for me to imagine you enjoying Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon and not liking this game. I think it is one my like early take on Twitter was like, I think this is one of the funniest games ever made. Like, truly, just from a writing standpoint, there is so much writing in it, and so much of it is really, really funny in like consistently surprising ways. And then it's also got that great Yakuza like melodrama, and the combat is really fun. You know, it's like if you start thinking about the story for more than 30 seconds, things kind of start to not work in like a soap opera-y way, but like, I don't care, you know, because the characters are solid, and that's what matters.
And it's like the same level of story quality as Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I loved a lot. I mean, maybe I wasn't thinking about it as hard as a Jacob Geller type or something.
Maybe even a little more disjointed. There are things that happen in this game that seem really big, and then no one ever references them again. Like, consistently that happens. But like, again, they're games about characters, you know? And so like, if you want to poke plot holes, you can, but you're missing the point of like what you're here for.
Right.
I mean,
right.
it's also a game where the protagonist is in another country, but manages to run into everyone from his life in the last game for some reason or another. And it's like, I'm totally fine with that. It doesn't bother me one iota that it's like, oh, you're here in Hawaii too? You're here in Hawaii too? It's like,
if you did a lot of side quests in 7, you will be reintroduced to basically all of those characters again, despite the fact that you are in Hawaii and they ostensibly are also from Japan. So everyone's on vacation at the same time.
Why not? Like, it's a more fun way to go. Yeah, I mean, that is my big takeaway too, Jacob. It's just like, I've had a weird relationship with Yakuza where I dabbled in it before with like 0 and 6, and then 7, Yakuza Like a Dragon was the first one that really clicked with me, and I absolutely loved it. And since then, I was like, should I try Ishin? I dabbled a little bit, and then the man who erased his name, Gaiden, like I have that downloaded as well, but I didn't start it. I'm like, I think I'm going to hold out for quote unquote 8, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth here. And a part of me feels really thankful that I did, just because jumping into this, I am so excited. Like, I am so excited to jump back into a Like a Dragon game. Like, it feels like peak excitement, like seeing Ichiban again. Like, I know he's in a big part of those other 2 games, but still just seeing him again, it's just like, oh my God, my old friend. It's been 4 years since I've seen you. And just like, they nail his character so well, even in like the early phase of this game before you go to Hawaii, which obviously is the big hook. It just makes you fall in love with this dude and all of your friends again before the real big adventure starts. But Hubert, I know, I'm trying to remember, it seemed like you were a little bit, even though you like a Dragon, you're a little bit burned out just by how many have been happening and coming out recently. But how are you feeling with this one now?
This like a Dragon Gaiden like really started to bring me back, because I was feeling the fatigue because I've been on this train for so long, and it was like 3 of those games in a 1-year period. It was like Ishin, like a Dragon Gaiden, and then now Infinite Wealth. So it's like, yo, this is a lot of Yakuza. But this game has blown me away. Not even just like how good of a Yakuza game it is, but like how good of a JRPG it is.
Yeah.
It's like
absolutely
insanely balanced. Like the combat is like really thoughtful and really measured out for the whole way. Like I for the longest time, I didn't feel over leveled. The economy was really nice. Like I needed money for like a really long time. Just all the side quests, all the things you can get invested in. Like it feels just like such a better JRPG than 7 did.
Yeah.
Well, I think they really like perfected that part of it.
Yeah, I'm so curious about that.
I think the balance in it, in the sort of like everything you do feels worthwhile and affects something else in a way that feels worthwhile, it's fantastic. I mean, it makes you want to do a lot of the, you know, kind of side content or even mini game stuff that it throws at you, because it's not just like I'm going to think this is fun, although basically all of the mini games are freaking awesome in this game, or side content and stuff. But it also like affects other parts. So, like, even if all you care about is the combat and getting through the story, it like is still worthwhile to do that stuff because it circles back and affects other things.
Yeah. And that's the thing about Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I love so much. But even when pitching it to like, you know, my friends that love JRPGs, it's like, it's an awesome, awesome, awesome game. I was like, I mean, it's as an RPG, it's a little uneven. Like there were some weird difficulty spikes in that one that I haven't encountered yet. In this one, I'm curious.
Bosses.
Like, yeah, it's just, it would come out of left field. Like, okay, why is this one taking me 3 hours to get past this battle? But Infinite Wealth, like everybody else agrees, just as an RPG, it feels much smoother.
Yeah, I like grinding in these games, and so there might be parts. There are definitely bosses where you're like, oh boy, this is a big one.
Okay.
I never had to like do more than I wanted. This game, kind of like the previous one, just has like a dungeon that you can just go in and do. And I think it's really, it is a credit to the game that like, I just think the basic combat in this game is so fun that I am really happy to do those dungeons. You know, like it doesn't feel like a chore because you are so consistently unlocking like new abilities for new character classes and finding out different ways that you can work together, and like they really they pace out those unlocks so frequently that like, grinding for 30 minutes will get you like really, really noticeable improvement. And it's fun the whole time because like the combat is interesting and good. And
if you're doing the dungeons to do that grinding, you're also like earning other things that, again, like, like every part of it just feeds into each other. So even if you just want to do, I've done like the first third of, there's a couple dungeons in the game. I've done like the first third of both of them, and like wanted to do that. The story encourages you to do a little bit of, I think maybe even makes you do a tiny bit of both of them. Yeah. But I was just like, well, I'm just going to finish this because I'm having a good time. And basically if you do that, I mean, I haven't had to grind unless you count doing the dungeon that I wanted to do anyways as grinding.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, and then you get out, you have so much more money, you can go and buy things, you've deepened your bond with all the characters, and so you can go to a bar and have a drink with them and have these like awesome little conversations. And then when you have a drink with them, now the characters, like, they do more knockback and they'll like attack downed enemies more. Perfect. And so like your personal relationship with them is affecting like their utility in combat. It rules. It is one of those like just one more thing games, because everything that you're doing is going to feed back into like, now that I've got the drink link with them, I can do even more. And then I can go back to that dungeon because our bond is strengthened. Like, it all feeds back into itself.
Yeah. I mean, Huber, with your love of bonds, like, that is the thing that really killed me, even out of like the opening of this game, is like going back to the survive bar with your best buddies from the last game. And I don't want to spoil it, but like, just there's an early quote unquote mission or like quest that is just one of the most clever ways to like reintroduce all of the characters I've seen in the game in a long time. It's like where you're making some choices between the different characters, that type of thing. It's like, this is a great, just compact summary of what you need to know from the last game. That's I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I think there's gonna be a lot of people, maybe they forgot Yakuza Like a Dragon, maybe they never played it before, but I think the game does a really good job of, there's not like a big recap video in the opening, but as far as I can tell, they just kind of like trickle in what you need to know as you're playing the game. Like if they're going to be referencing a character, they'll have a little aside. You'd be like, hey, do you want to learn about
like
Young
a little
Master?
image of them from a past game? They do really well.
Yeah.
Or like Ichiban will be like, so wait, let me go over this again. And he'll be like, okay, this is happening. This is happening.
Yeah.
Like this happened because of this. So they do a really good job of explaining it.
I didn't play 7, but I watched my wife play a good bit of it. So like I'm at least somewhat familiar with the characters. And I haven't felt lost. Like the closest thing to a recap is in the beginning, Ichiban almost literally asks the player, like, do you want me to explain who these two men are that I'm looking at? Which I appreciate it. But the thing that consistently cracks me up is often Ichiban will run into a character and he will be like, oh, I know you. And it'll show the character and then it will cut to a sepia photo of the character and then cut back. And it's like, you're just showing me the same person. It does not like give me any context for what's going on here. But like you're saying, Michael, like Ichiban then kind of explains at least enough. Like he doesn't go overboard with recap, but like I really feel like I have a good handle on what's happening for the most part.
I even like that sometimes Ichiban is like, wait, who are you again? Like,
even he's forgotten.
But he's such a sweetie that like nobody minds. Like it is Ichiban, he feels just like Jesus, like running around in this game. He's just, especially in the beginning, he's just like a superhero in his neighborhood and have everyone just like wave like, oh, Ichiban, we love you guys. Like it is so uplifting to have this character who is just that hell-bent on being good and doing good despite everything. And like, he will look out for every single person he comes across. But then if there's some shady looking person that attacks him, then he'll beat the crap out of that homeless person. But every other homeless person, he will like care deeply for. It's just the best character.
Throughout the story, there's so many scenes where people are like, no, you can't be this good of a guy. Like, are you actually going to do that? And he's like, yes, I am. And it stays good, you know? And it is really like, I think the part of this game, if we're talking about kind of previous Yakuza knowledge, there's a bunch of Kiryu's stuff in this game, and a lot of that is very past looking. There's a lot of kind of like thinking about stuff that Kiryu's done in other games. Yeah. And a lot of that, as someone who has not played 0 through 6, is not necessary. It's not confusing, but it's not like landing with me necessarily. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, because I actually kind of disagree. But I've played a couple of those in there. I have not played 0 through 6, but I actually thought I thought it was handled pretty well the way they reintroduced Kiryu stuff.
I mean, I agree, and I think it's like it is a testament to the game that like the emotional beats still are there, and you can like. I'm not confused why Kiryu's feeling a certain way, but it's almost like the game is divided into two halves, and one of them is like, think about the whole past of what you've gone through, and then part of it with Ichiban is like, hey, I'm the future, I'm so nice, you know, and like the game basically makes that textual in a really interesting way.
Is it like a matter of like those Kiryu scenes? You're kind of like, oh, I bet that would have hit harder if I had more context. But otherwise, I'm not confused.
Yeah, I don't want to get too spoilery because a lot of this is later game stuff. There's definitely some scenes where, yes, I think it would hit harder if like, you know, there's stuff that's clearly from like 5 and I didn't play 5 or what, you know what I mean? Like and it's like, well, if I had known this character a little bit better, I think that would have hit harder. But there's also a lot of things that are very small vignettes that I don't think, like, I'm sure to someone who's played all of those, they're like, it is hitting a little harder for them, but it's not really meant to be a super emotional gut punch. It's just meant to. I think this game is like the most beautiful funeral for Kiryu that I've ever seen. Like, just in terms of like, we are actually, they've killed this character before. They've said goodbye to him, and I feel like this is the actual, like, for the player, the correct.
And to be clear, none of us have beat the game, so we don't actually know what happens to him.
That's true. That's true.
You mean funerals?
Yeah, I said funeral. I did not mean to imply he's dead. I don't know. I don't know if that's how the game ends or not. But it is just a really, it's a beautiful, just kind of like reflection of everything that Kiryu has been through and you've been through with him. And even if you haven't been there with him every step of the way, I think it's still handled in a really like, I'm appreciating all those moments that even I wasn't there for.
It's been really epic. Like, it's hitting me really hard because there's like some story beats that have like, there's some things like in my real life that are also happening in the game, some like tragic stuff. So it's just like all these emotions are like swirling around, and it's definitely a bittersweet. Like, it's like you were saying how funny it was. It absolutely is like a funny, lighthearted, jolly game. It's got it all. Melodrama, but it's also like really melancholic and like bittersweet a lot of the time, which I really love.
That's the weirdest thing too, is like getting into this series so late. I know everybody always said that, but I'm like, I don't understand how they can manage that tone. And somehow playing these games now, like, it just works. Like, it is the funniest damn thing. And then somehow all of the drama hits me so hard. And I feel like
the side quests are always super funny. That's where a lot of the comedy is put in, for sure. And the main story, of course. But
even then with the side quest, it will like start with like, there's a side quest that starts with you walking up and you see a man buy like ice cream and he throws it up into the air and it lands on his head. And then by the end of that quest, it is like the most emotionally resonant thing.
I'm not joking. I literally cried at the end of that.
That's so good.
And I always also, it's like, I crack up every time where they have this musical cue that's like da na 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 na.
The classic sad theme. It's like, all right, here we go.
Where it's like, okay, this is the story about the guy who always wanted to hit the baseball, but his father never let him have baseballs. And then at the end, he's like, this really makes you think a lot about life. And it like plays that song and it always works. It is both funny and legitimately like emotionally compelling at the same time.
Hey, Kyle, what's it like for you to jump into this thing? I mean, never having actually played a turn-based Yakuza before.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I mean, a lot of the things that like I have said about or will say about this game in a positive way are things I think everyone was saying about 7.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like late to the party to a certain degree. And like, I played Gaiden like with the explicit purpose of like, let me play this shorter game to get an idea of who Kiryu is. So I can at least have him in my pocket to go into 8. And one of my takeaways from that game was like, I did not really like the combat. Like it was like an aspect of the game I didn't like. And it was like the first combat encounter in this game, I was like, oh my god, I completely understand why they switched to this. It's so much faster and so much more fun. That it was just like, I think when they very first announced that 7 was switching to RPG, I think everyone was kind of surprised by that. I mean, I wasn't really like following the series too closely, but I was just kind of like, oh, that's odd. That's like a weird thing to do. But it takes like 5 minutes. And I'm like, yes, I absolutely prefer this. Yeah. Fights go faster. They're flashier. They're more interesting. They're funnier because all the characters are so goofy and weird and all the like enemies you encounter. It's
those damn flashers.
Or the guys, the early guys in the sleeping bags are the ones that stand out.
That are like the cobras. Yeah.
Squirm worms.
Oh, squirm worms.
It's so funny because like a lot when it comes to RPGs in general, most of my life, like there are a handful of RPGs that really I attach to and I love, but for the most part, honestly, like I just get sort of annoyed with how long combat takes. And so like the fact that it's weirdly faster than the action combat of Gaiden, which is my only point of reference, to like get in a fight and have a good time and get out. It executes on that so much better.
And it is kind of weird in this one too that they're like, it's still turn-based, but it's definitely inching up the action a little bit. So it's weird to be like, we're going turn-based, but this one's like, well, it's turn-based, but like you can walk around in like a small little radius. We'll give you a little bit so you can still pick up some items from the environment and have a little bit more action feel to the turn-based stuff.
It's good. It's like they're basically turning it into the Breach, because now like a huge part of the combat is like you're gonna knock this guy into your friend, and your friend is gonna kick him, and it's like it's just that little bit of extra interest to where it's like it's not like enormously more tactical, but it's just like you get to think about one other thing in combat in a really satisfying way.
Is it?
So that's all new for 8, knocking people into other. Because that seems like such a
positioning to do it. I think like
that
coincidentally
was in 7, but you couldn't like set yourself up for it as much. Like it was more like you'd have to think more like 3 steps ahead and be like, I want to attack this guy, so I end up over here so that I can then.
Okay.
Whereas now you can just kind of walk around.
Could you do the time button pressing to defend in 7?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's like key to my heart. Like if you have time button
that.
pressing in your RPG combat, like Sea of Stars last year, you know, like I it really just keeps me more interested overall. I've also hit a point now, which again could totally be something in 7, I'm sure, where really low level enemies I can just instantly like end the fight for like I don't get quite as much experience, which is another one of those RPG things that I just loved. Like you hit a point in Earthbound where if you go back to the starting town and you touch an enemy, it just instantly ends, but you get the experience. Yeah. And that's like another one of those little things that will make me really love an RPG, and Like a Dragon has it.
Yeah, there are some like little quality of life things they've improved. I don't think this was in 7, but it's been a number of years. But like, it's so nice to be able on the map to hover over a shop and you can like hit square and it'll show you like the recommended items in that shop.
Oh man.
Which is
I figured that out like 40 hours in.
Oh no. There's a lot to digest in the beginning, I get it. But then also the nice thing too is like you can basically, it'll still cost you money like you're using a taxi to fast travel, but you don't have to get to the taxi to do it, which I think is new this time around. You can just kind of jump right to stuff and it's like, it'll cost you 1,200 yen or whatever.
You could use your phone, I know, in Gaiden like that. Like you can use your phone and just like travel like straight to a spot. So
gotcha.
like,
Ben, have you gone to Hawaii yet?
Yeah. So I'm just starting to explore Hawaii, which...
Because you said yen.
Right. Yeah.
Which is another weird little touch that I loved is that when you land in Hawaii, it's like, by the way, we got to convert to American currency now. I'm like, oh, weird. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I totally get why they did $1 equals 100 yen, but that is not even close to the exchange rate right now. It's like $1 is like 142 yen.
The only way I want this to be a living game is if they keep the conversion rate up on a daily basis and like adjust it. I think that'd be a fascinating way to
actually in the conversion rate.
I think people like hardcore fans of this stuff would be into it, but I'm totally with you where it's like, that struck me in such a big way of like, all right, you're building up everything in Japan, then you're going to Hawaii. It's the big hook here. And they convert your money. And okay, the language stuff I want to get into as well, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I know. I really want to talk about that.
They convert your money. And I was like, God, I can't think of another RPG that's had you go to a different country and convert your money like this. But I guess there's so few like real world RPGs that's kind of what makes Like a Dragon special at this point. It is kind of going back to that Earthbound roots, I guess, of just like, it's not a fantastical world, but it's just something that for somebody who's been playing RPGs.
Sorry, the Earthbound relationship between these two games, even though I just referenced Earthbound,
it's there.
Like I'm like connecting those dots. I'm like, oh wait, that's why I like a Dragon.
Yeah, that's why we're all really excited about this series. Yeah, freaking rules. But okay, the language thing, I'm curious to see where everybody's at because I like playing these in Japanese. Definitely. And then it's
because you're the thinking person.
Please hold your applause, everybody. But then it's so wild. Then when you go to Hawaii, it's like, okay, now NPCs are speaking in English. But now bear with me, the part that breaks my brain is there are moments then, and I'm curious where you all are at, where Japanese characters are speaking in English in Hawaii. Because they're like, oh, actually, I grew up in Hawaii, so I speak perfect, fluent English. But because it's the Japanese VO, the English isn't exactly perfect. So it's just this bizarre, fun disconnect. You know what I mean? Where like a character will be like, I grew up in Hawaii, so my English is great. But it's like, because you're on the Japanese track, it's a Japanese voice actor trying to speak in perfect English instead of them just jumping to a perfect English speaker. And it's like, my mind can't wrap the layers that are happening here for what's in the game versus not.
It gets worse than that because there are some characters that like like aren't Japanese that they did not use an English speaking voice actor for, clearly. I just watched a cutscene last night where a white guy said that he was very proud, and I was like, you guys,
right?
it's really weird, and it's like, I don't know quite what the right word for it is, because I don't hate it, but it's like, it is. There are multiple characters who have say I've never been to Japan, and they speak Japanese perfectly, and they speak English like they are reading it phonetically.
Yes,
that I genuinely think that's what is happening. And what's, I guess, my real disappointment with the game, which I hopefully I've communicated I love, is like, Hawaii does not feel really like another country. I think most of that is the language thing, where like every side quest that you enter, every like random interaction, it's like taxi drivers will speak English in their kind of like ambient dialogue when they're picking you up, but like there will be like police officers racistly talking about Japan in perfect Japanese, and it's like, outside of the first 30 minutes that you're in Hawaii, there is like not a single real acknowledgement of like, there's a language barrier here. And I almost wish they would have made up some like, here's an earbud and it lets you understand
That's what
English
I thought they were
or something.
Do. Yeah. They definitely hide a lot of it too, because there's so many moments where there's no VO. So it's like character, just text going on. So it's like, you don't even think about it for a while. And then it'll have just like some weird moment where it's like, wait, this person's like speaking perfect Japanese. Like, I don't understand this.
Yeah, from the first few minutes you're in Hawaii, the implication is that you have someone translating for you because you do not speak English. And then they just drop that completely. Yeah. And I guess, the implication is like that keeps happening, but we're just not going to like force you to, watch that over and over again. Right. And like, that's fine. But I do just think it is baffling to then not use, like, you're paying for English voice actors. Why not just use English voice actors for the people that are speaking English? Strange choice to me. And
I think here's the even weirder thing. It happens sometimes. Like there's a character who's voiced by who's the machete guy? Who's
Danny
like
Trejo.
Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo is in this game. Like he's a character in this game.
Is he who I think he is?
He's the one who looks like Danny Trejo.
White,
right? Yes. And his character, when he speaks English, it is Danny Trejo, and when he speaks Japanese, I assume it's not, unless Danny Trejo is really good at speaking Japanese.
Make him read it phonetically.
But there are other. My friend Blake, who works for Game Informer and is writing about this game, I think looked it up. I think several characters, including Tomizawa, who's one of the main characters, and Kelsey, the one that you were referring to, I think they're like Japanese celebrities, or at least like pretty big stars in Japan. And so they might even have something contractual about like it's got to be their voice the whole time or something, because like sometimes they do switch and then sometimes they don't, and it's like it's just really weird.
But I think that's
interesting.
Worth it for like
I'm gonna have to look into that, because that's wild. Yeah. It's such a weird. It's so jarring every time it happens. Like I stood up last night when, like the not great accent is fine. But yeah, like you said, it's they're reading it phonetically sometimes, and it's just like, this is jarring.
There's so many games where you like learn languages in the game, you'll get little things to like unlock, your language proficiency. I wonder if they like thought about doing that, or
a chance of sonar style mini game.
Diversions in this game. I wouldn't have been surprised, but
right. Yeah.
I would love for Ichiban in 4 days to have just been like, "Yep, mastered English. We got this."
Yeah. And they totally could have got away with that narratively.
Just have him be really excited in the morning. Like, I was reading English books all night. Now I get it. Like, it would totally work within that character. I don't think we'd bat an eye. He'd be like, "These books are great." And it's like, yeah, all right, cool, Ichiban, you got it.
Like,
man.
I do think something that this game is really good at, which these games are usually good at, but they're usually set in Japan, is like there is a lot of very Hawaiian specific stuff that I think is really cool. You know, there's a lot of ambient dialogue about stuff that is really consistently funny, and you should read all of it. You know, there's the food has like a huge kind of like, there's so many restaurants and you can go and order different foods and whatever. And like in the kind of Yakuza takes on a societal issue thing that they all do, it's like there's a lot of writing about how like Hawaii has the largest homeless population in the US, and like it, you know, it seems like people are almost shipped here and left because Hawaii is like, you know, different from the continental US. And it's like really thoughtful, interesting stuff that is like clearly there's a lot of research put into like what's going on in Hawaii, and it just makes me wish that they did a little more like Ichiban is experiencing a new culture stuff, because he just gets with it so fast in the game's story.
Yeah.
It's actually really crazy because I was just there over the holidays for vacation, and I like recognized some spots. It was like true crime streets of LA back in the day. I was like, wait a sec, like LA Noir. I was like, wait a sec, I was right here. Like this is it felt really accurate, so I was like pretty blown away. I'm no Hawaiian expert, but I was like, dude, I was like right on this street.
My big thing from visiting Hawaii a few years ago was there are ABC stores in the game, which I wonder, I don't know if they licensed the actual store in Hawaii or if it's that you can use ABC because it's just so vague.
I assume so, because I mean they've got like Mountain Dew in the game. They've got all of the Japanese drinks are like real Japanese drinks, like the Boss Coffee and Suntory and all of it. Like those. Yeah. Those all exist.
The weird thing, and to be clear, ABC stores is like a very common convenience store in Hawaii. They're really cool. They're like it's just like a nice convience store that are all over the place.
But I assumed it was like an alcohol store.
It is in mainland America, but in Hawaii it's like a convenience store. But I think the logo is different in the game.
Huh.
Which is weird. I think it's the same color, but a different design. I mean, it's the minutia of the kind of thing. It's like, I visited ABC store all the time when I was in Hawaii, and now I'm in one in Yakuza, you know?
Kelsey, I take it you caught that little nod early on when you have the Sujimon Sensei, basically the Pokemon professor, coming out, and he's talking about like, what, you deleted the app from your phone from the last game? That wasn't stored in the cloud. You got to collect these Sujimon all over again. And then he says that he's talking about Hawaii, and he's like, oh, Hawaii is a whole different region of Sujimon. It's blessed by the sun and the moon. It's like, I never thought this game would make a Pokemon Sun and Moon Alola reference. That's so fun.
There are so many Pokemon references in the Sujimon stuff. There is a Sujimon character named Satori that's just Ash's name in Japan, and he's like a 10-year-old boy, and like it's
fun.
There's a lot of really awesome, Satoshi, not Satori. There's a lot of really very funny like nods to things.
And just to be clear, we love it when they make Pokemon references and homages in this game, but not Palworld. Is that how the internet's coming down these days? Is that the takeaway?
I don't think those are comparable things.
I know. Hey, you're off
I don't think naming this one is like extremely clearly parody.
Yeah, I was going to say one is explicitly parody, one is not. Right?
Yeah. We'll save the Palworld discussion for later in the podcast, I'm sure. But I've been spending a good amount of time with the Sujimon stuff, a good amount of time with the Dondoko Island stuff, which is what people are calling Animal Crossing, which is, I mean, like it has fishing and decorating and bug catching and stuff, but I actually think it's very good at being its own thing. It's an island designing game, but your goal is to like rehabilitate the island and keep guests happy, and they all have their like specific wants and needs and stuff. It's a very fun little loop, and then just like everything else in the game, doing well in this rewards you in the actual game, and so I think they've nailed a lot of the mini game and game within a game stuff. There's an awesome Crazy Taxi clone in there.
My favorite.
Perfect.
It's so good.
Even the character looks like the main like crazy taxi character with like the green buzz cut. So awesome.
Though I will also say, and this is how Kelsey and I have been playing it differently, I have truly not touched the Pokemon stuff or the island stuff at all, and the game does not penalize you for it. And like, I still have enough money to do everything. I remember in 7, I felt like I had to do the like business tycoon stuff at some point because I just did not have enough money. But in this, like, you get money from all sorts of things, so I'm not feeling pressured into doing those mini games.
I love though that stuff is there if you want to do it, but then also the side stuff can get really hard in these games, which I love, like the battle arenas in the older games, and there's always stuff that's like, yo, you got to be like really high level to get through some of that like end game side stuff. So I really like that there's this optional area where it's like, yo, if you've been grinding and doing everything in this game, like you can do that.
Yeah. I'm still pretty early in this game. I understand it, and to be clear, I would have said this before maybe I went to any sort of event last week. But I just don't think there's a universe where we're not debating Infinite Wealth versus Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for Game of the Year 2024.
Game of the year?
You might be. I
mean,
I think this has got a shot for me, but it's January. I'm not gonna hang my hat on that yet.
Call it. Hang your hat somewhere, Kelsey. Make the call.
I mean, I like Lost Crown a whole lot.
Ooh, okay. All right. So between Lost Crown,
I'm going back and forth between those. You know, it's like play Prince of Persia at night for about an hour in bed after I finish playing an hour of Like a Dragon in the living room. You know.
Yeah. Jacob, I mean, is there any way to quantify how much you're enjoying this game overall, since you're the closest to the finish line?
I love it. I think it's great. I think it'll be in the 5 to 10 range of my game of the year is what I'm guessing. You know, that I, and it depends how well it ends. You know,
sure.
Gaiden absolutely killed it with the ending, but it was still my number 9. You know, it's like, I do think that the game is really, really good at doing a lot of things, but like, I do think that does, you know, it's harder to remember it as an experience a year from now, essentially, to be like, what did that game do? I spent 50 hours with it. I did everything, you know, which is a little harder to make an argument for. I do just want to say before we wrap up, and I think, Kelsey, you said something similar to this to me, is my partner loves watching this game like no other game. Like she made very clear, like when I was going on, she's like, you have to tell them how much I like this game.
Yeah, I told Jacob that my partner basically never watches me play video games. He's usually playing his own video game, and we might be in the same room or whatever. He sets his game down and watches. This is the only game ever that I've seen him do that for.
That's perfect. By the way, this is barely related. You all, I think, would be shocked how many messages I get on Patreon of people saying that they watch House Hunter Rise, the new show plus series that we've done a couple times, with their partners. It is getting overwhelming. Everyone being like,
I know, I do the same thing. I could send those messages.
Is that right? I'm like, I really love you guys. I love your gaming coverage. Also, I dragged my wife into the room to watch House Hunter Rise, and she loves you guys now too. And sometimes like the wife will start supporting us just because of House Hunter Rise. Like House Hunter Rise is the ultimate couples content, apparently. So at some point we need to bring it back.
For that age range of presumably of that person who's watching that content, they probably really enjoy looking at listings on Zillow.
I guess that's probably
I mean, that's
true.
kind of like a modern thing, right? Is people like looking at Zillow and hoping to have their own listing on Zillow someday.
Someday they can rise like a real
not for
house
sale
owner
anymore.
No. All right. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. It's out on Friday for old consoles as well. Not Nintendo Switch. I don't think. It's not some cloud thing on the Switch or anything, is it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Sweet. Anything else we didn't hit that people are dying to say about this? I mean, we're going to be coming back to this again and again and again, I'm sure. I'm so curious to hear what Sarah thinks and Janet thinks.
The acting is good.
Yeah.
If you're playing in Japanese, I watched the English trailer and it sounded terrible, but that's just the trailer.
But people love it. Like people that play English, it does not bump them at all. You know, I don't want to be too much of a Japanese snob when it comes to this games, because I think it'll do a great job for the dubs.
I will say, the only reason I'm playing in Japanese is because my wife does not want spoilers.
Oh, fun. Okay.
She's taking the day off on Friday to play. Because she's every in the lead up to this, every now and then she'd be like, I think 7's my favorite game of all time. I've been thinking about it. So she was like, please play in Japanese if I'm in the room. Because I won't pay attention to the screen. I just don't want to hear spoilers. So I might actually switch over to dub because I'm a person who really does not mind dub. I think modern dub is quite good. So I don't really have a problem. Although I was talking to Marcus Stewart over at Game Informer, who's been playing it dubbed, and I guess the way they handle the language barrier stuff is just it's on you as the player to just assume that Ichiban is speaking Japanese when he's really speaking English. Like they don't really compensate for it in any radical way, which might be confusing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm loving it. It's gonna be a game I'm playing for a very long time here.
Really good cast and really good setting. I love the Hawaiian setting. You know, there's gangs that are more like Foot Clan than Yakuza, which I really like.
Okay.
Just like the vibes are different enough, but obviously also familiar. I'm just really enjoying the cast and the fish out of water vibe.
Yeah. That's it. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, everybody. Don't be confused about the name of that series anymore. It's Like a Dragon. This is your last chance to be confused, world. We all got to get up to speed now. Okay. Also out now is The Last of Us Part 2, everybody. I'll be damned. Of course, you should all know that Sony technically provided these review codes, sent it over. We got to point that out. But this is the remaster of The Last of Us Part 2. It's confusing. It was on PS5 before they made the upgrades, but now this is the super duper for PS5 version for real. Is that the best way to put it here?
Well, because it was on PS4, but then they had a 60 frames patch, which is like the biggest thing.
Yes. But technically, this is the original PS4 game. But Jacob, how much time have you played with the remaster? How much time have you tinkered around with this thing?
I have played the Lost levels, and then I spent some time with the roguelike. I have not. I'm really interested in the director's commentary, but I just wish that I could just watch all of them without playing the game, because I played that game again last year and it's 30 hours long and I don't want to do it again just to hear commentary.
I thought somebody told me that like if you have a save that you beat it and you bring it into the PS5 version here, that you can actually skip the gameplay sequences. Is there something?
Oh, maybe. I haven't
Okay.
tried.
I think somebody told me that, but I got to dig through the details. But there's a lot of weird options like that. Hubert, you might like The Last of Us more than anybody I've ever heard on a podcast.
I love The Last of Us.
Okay. I mean,
I am too.
Jesus. Okay. Have you played 2? I mean, not nearly as much as you've played 1, but like how many times have you played through 2 at this point, do you think?
At least 4 or 5.
Okay. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So what do you think about
I love The Last of Us.
That's sweet. And specifically, like you love the combat and gameplay.
Love the combat, love the story, love it all.
So this should be for you, like a $10 upgrade for PS5 version. You have the roguelite mode in there. So what do you think about this version of it?
It's a really good remaster. Like the base game looks and plays better than it ever did. It's really, really just like crisp. Really nice.
Crisp.
Question.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, I'm not asking the playing. Well, I guess I am, because it's like I did not notice a visual upgrade here. And I think part of it is because, man, The Last of Us 2 looked so good. But it's like I played it on PS5 last year, running on the PS4 one with the frames per second. And I'm not noticing a visual upgrade, but I also have not spent as much time with it as you.
Yeah. Maybe the last time I played it, I did play it on my monitor.
Oh,
now I'm playing it on like my TV. Maybe that has to do with a little bit. Like, but no, I totally get that. It's really funny when like you see the side by side like pictures online, like original remastered, and it like looks the same.
It's so tough.
But I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's just placebo effect. But I definitely was like, oh, this looks and feels better to me for sure.
Yeah, it's a good upgrade. Charging $10 for this upgrade, I feel great about it. And for a dork like me, and I assume some people listening, like it's mainly for the lost levels and the commentary there, which I think is fascinating. But I think the big hook for the outside is the no return roguelike mode. But
which I'm pretty critical about.
Really?
Personally, yeah.
What about it?
I just don't like the unlocks. Like I think the unlocks and just like the roguelike element of it just doesn't hit with me. Like you'll unlock gambits, which are like, okay, now you have like additional challenges in a map where it's like throw a bottle at someone and you can get an extra coin that you can spend in the next round or whatever. Or, the gameplay modifiers, like those are really fun and cool, but unlocking them just isn't exciting.
Okay.
Like I never got excited to unlock anything. I just never felt like I never felt the need for like, oh, one more like that. There was never the hook to keep going. Because I love the combat a lot in The Last of Us, but also one of the biggest reasons I love the combat is the context of those scenarios.
Right.
You're trying to get somewhere in the main game and all of a sudden like this other faction comes out of nowhere and now you're creeping through the woods. Like the context around all those encounters are such a strength of the game. Whereas now it's just like, all right, fight, which is just really good. The fighting is really good. But when you have that and you don't have that extra, hook to keep going, it wasn't as strong as I was hoping.
But you're like unlocking some stuff here and there. Like, hey, you can
unlock the characters, but you can do that so quickly.
Okay.
Like you can unlock all the characters within like, a couple hours. Like you got all of them.
How long does it take?
But that to me is the best part, being able to play as these characters that you are never really able to play as. Like just being able to play as Tommy is such a thrill, or like Lev and Yara together is like one of my most fun. Like I just love playing as both of them.
Yeah.
So unlocking the characters is definitely a highlight for sure.
I really loved Abby has a skin in this game where it's just her wearing a shirt with the old ass Naughty Dog design with like the big horny looking stupid cartoon dog. It's like, yes, this is perfect.
The skins are weird. You can get like a Fantavision shirt. Like it's right.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of old games that aren't even like Sony games in some instances. I don't know. Have you seen that, Michael? I mean, they're minor unlocks. It's just shirts, but I haven't
seen that one, but yeah, okay. I've definitely taken a look at all of those skins for sure.
Ark the Lad. There's an
Ark the Lad hype. I was like, oh, dude, I never played Ark the Lad, but my friend in middle school was obsessed with Ark the Lad.
Like weird. It's one of those like small questions that I would just be curious if Naughty Dog has answered. Of like, we polled our staff to just see what like weird, like cult games internally we love, and that's why we have Ark the Lad and Fantavision unlocked.
Do they have like Hotline Miami? That's the weird outsider game that is in Last of Us Part 2 already. They really do have a shirt for that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's bizarre. All right, awesome.
The roguelike mode is it's like really up and down for me, because I think like an interesting thing about The Last of Us 2 is like the combat is so like involved and kind of thoughtful, and playing it I was struck by like sometimes you would go through a combat encounter and then find out that there was like an entire like 2/3 of the arena that you never even went in, that like this situation was so kind of ornately designed, and then like you shot a gun and everyone ran at you and you just ended up killing all of them. And so like on one level I really like the idea of kind of like giving you combat rooms for this, because you get to experiment in ways that you don't in the main game. And also it's like resources are less scarce. And so like, I would just always try to stealth kill everyone while playing through The Last of Us, because I'm like, bullets are valuable. I don't want to use those. And so this is a chance to kind of do more than that. But it is, the obvious contrast to this is the God of War DLC, the roguelike DLC that just came out. And like God of War combat is very fun, and it is like cool, and you feel good doing it. And it is really weird to go through combat encounter rooms with The Last of Us 2 combat. And this isn't even, I have seen criticisms of kind of people being like, this is against the point of the game. And I'm not even really making that argument, but it's just weird to be like, here's the arcade mode where if you shoot someone in the stomach, they will scream like they're actually dying, which is like what The Last of Us 2 does. And additionally, unlocking some of the characters, and maybe this is just for this one, but like I unlocked Lev last night, who's like the best character in The Last of Us 2. And I was Lev. Playing Lev, and I thought, this feels gross, because it's like weird. Lev's whole character in that game is like, he is both kind of the like beacon of light. He is like the one person who's not like corrupted by revenge in that story, and also like it's like him holding a machine gun feels messed up, you know, like me like headshotting 4 people in a row with Lev, like, because they do such a good job of like giving him a character. I was like, I don't like this, you know. It felt like I was like betraying his character in a way that I like never felt with Kratos or Atreus or something.
I get that, but then it's like, I think because I messed around with like the encounter select from the original so often, where it's like, I've seen that argument of like, oh, it's just weird that you like are just like fighting and the, you know, that's against the game. But it's like, they already had an encounter select to do this very thing, to just go back and like blow everybody away. So I think that element hasn't like bothered me, but I will say, I like that you said you stealth a lot, because I feel like No Return also is at odds with itself, because I really love stealth too. I love creeping through those environments and not being seen and taking them out. But you get scored based on how quickly you get through these. So then it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm not gonna stealth because I'm getting like scored on being efficient, on getting headshots and finishing as fast as I can. So it's like this whole half of the combat is like you're kind of penalized for.
That's tough. Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I'm always in the camp of like, well, if it's an optional thing, it's fine. I mean, like, did like the factions mode deflate the impact in Last of Us Part 1? You know, it's like, and like I am in favor of this upgrade overall, even though it costs $10, just for like, maybe they felt like, oh, we want to charge people for the PS5 version. What can we do to maybe get some more money out of people, which maybe is a gross impulse, but at the same time, it's like, when the answer is, I don't know, more transparency in the game development. We have that roguelike mode, but then like we're also going to do commentary for all the cutscenes, and then just like there's only 3 of them, but having those lost levels of like sequences early in development, cut sequences.
I hope more games do that. That stuff was so interesting, and just seeing, like, hearing them talk about why things got cut, and then realizing too as a player, it's like, oh yeah, like, this would have been weird here. Like, I absolutely see why.
You're right. This isn't fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like one of them is, and I don't want to oversell it. Like, it's 3 levels that are pretty small. You know, you just kind of walk around, and then
you can do the whole thing in 15 minutes, like all of them.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah, but you know, one of them's kind of like, here's a little mini game collection where we're walking around Jackson. You can do a bunch of little activities, and it feels a lot kind of like that. The carnival sequence in Spider-Man 2, you know, where it's just like, that is a tough thing to like polish all those different little stations, but it's a fun idea of like, okay, what if we had a workbench, and instead of crafting stuff, you're just mixing cocktails here. It's like, that is awesome. I love seeing this stuff. And I really love that in the commentary tracks too, they have people other than Neil Druckmann kind of walking through this stuff. You know, you don't often get to hear people from Naughty Dog, from the public's point of view, like talk about their work, but just to have like some of these designers, like Pete Ellis is walking through in a commentary track, like why they cut this section in the sewers. And like, that was maybe my favorite, because it just really dives into more than
was good.
Yeah, you just rarely get this access. And, you know, Valve commentary is great, but really get the access of just this level of like, okay, players, we want them to feel this in this area. And if they look this way, we think they're going to feel this, but it turns out they were feeling this. Like, just having that play-by-play for how they predicted players would react and the consequences when they started playtesting it is just fascinating, even if it's just a snippet. But like I've said in the podcast too many times, but my dream game from Naughty Dog is like, I would love just like a demo disc of all of their prototypes. Just get it out there. Why not? I'm talking like PS1 demo disc with the panels that can secretly flip over for the bonus stuff. Just give me weird in development early stuff. And I feel like this is the closest Naughty Dog has ever gotten to that, to actually let us play stuff that is not fully polished. And I hope it's just a good lesson for them, because now that the internet, I don't think, wants to scream about Last of Us Part 2 too much anymore, just having Neil Druckmann come
TV show's not out yet.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's going to explode again in a big bad way for sure. But just
next year,
all they need to do is just set that context of having Neil Druckmann in the little video before each section in the Lost levels that you play, where he just comes out and says like, hey, this isn't done, everybody. This is going to be rough.
He felt so nervous in those. Totally. He's like, I just want to make sure that you know that these are not done.
Right. But I feel like mission accomplished, and I really appreciate Neil Druckmann's kind of push for transparency throughout a lot of his career. Like, he feels almost like a Ryan Johnson in that way, where, he's not shy about walking through just, hey, here's the dead ends we went through in this game's development. He does a lot of interviews. Jacob, I know you talked about on your podcast, Something Rotten, that you thought he was talking too much about the development of Last of Us Part 2. I love that stuff.
I wish he would stop talking now as well.
Why? I don't understand.
Have you seen any of his political statements?
No, but when it comes to like the game's... Okay, but the game's development, like I will always push for wanting to hear more from the creators about the process they went through.
I think I want to hear more about how games are made and less about what they think it means.
Okay.
If I can draw that distinction.
Yeah.
Like I love when directors tell me how they made a movie. I hate when they tell me the message of their movie. And so this is, to that end, this is exactly what I want. And I really appreciate it. There's a thing in that sewer section where they talk about the mesh for crawling made it really weird when they had to crawl around a curve. So we had to make a custom thing so that they would go around the curve and it feels natural. And that's you hear that and you're like, that is why Naughty Dog games feel different, is because they're going to make a custom mesh to go around a curve. And you also think oh boy, they crunched a lot to make this game. This is an almost complete level that I'm playing that is not in the game.
Huge
that
budget.
That is also there.
Yeah. And you get to fight a boar in a gas station, which is pretty cool. But they also say that, they made a making of. Area 5 produced it as well. It's called Grounded 2 that they're going to release as a documentary. I'm really curious to see how that all comes together. And
Grounded 1 was so awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It's Sony. They're pretty tight. Like, Kyle, I'm with you. I know you talked about on the Game Informer show that I do think their God of War 2018 documentary was shockingly honest for how tight of a company Sony likes to be. So I'm curious to see what Area 5's production for Grounded 2 looks like here.
But I remember the original God of Wars had the making ofs, Cory Barlog in his kitchen making a sacked lunch, I'm going to work today.
yeah. God of War, the original, the very first one was weird because they were basically they had this is almost what their trajectory of the rest of the series will be and where the story is going to go. And here's what the game almost was. It was almost about Kratos and his brother. I'm like, man, you guys are sharing a lot of stuff that nowadays would be totally kept close to the chest.
Right. But did it hurt him?
No.
So that's the lesson, everybody. You can never get hurt from the community. Developers, have at it. We all love you.
And transition to Palworld.
And smooth transition, no doubt about it. All right, Palworld, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out, first of all, Haley McLean, the community manager and host of Bonus Pod. If you're a $5 supporter on Patreon, you get that bonus podcast each and every week. But she is a video game IP lawyer. So if you want to hear an informed discussion about Palworld, unlock Bonus Pod. It's a good episode.
And then read the
week.
Comments to get the real law from the real people.
That's right.
What they're talking about.
I feel so bad because we made a TikTok of Haley talking about Palworld versus Pokemon, just if it's under fair use and stuff, and it blew up. It has over 1 million views. It's oh cool,
that's awesome, man. That's really
cool. Happy that we had a hit on TikTok, and then at the same time it's this just means more pieces of are jumping in the comments to tell Haley about her job, and it's I don't know how I feel about this ultimately.
Yeah.
But it's all good. Palworld, everybody, the survival game that is inspired by Pokemon, but the reason that it's a fascinating thing for maybe reason number one is it has sold 7 million copies in 5 days.
My God.
Insane.
It is.
Yeah, Wesley LeBlanc from Game Informer is covering this closely, and he put it really into context for me in that it took, gosh, I'm sorry if I don't have the exact numbers that he shared, but it was I think it took 11 days for Spider-Man 2 to hit 5 or something. It was it just really put into context for me that it is outpacing a AAA Spider-Man game.
Yep.
I want to know how it compares against Pokemon games sales.
Ooh.
And how quick those roll in. But
because I think it was 10 million pretty quick they announced for Scarlet for the sales, but I forget if that was in the first month or something like that, but it would be fun to track that. I mean, this is what's fun about the game industry is just we all saw this game. Maybe we scoffed at it when Jeff Keighley said, hey, it's Pokemon with guns, everybody. And we all kind of moved on. And then just this sales haymaker can come out of left field. Yeah. It's like, this is what's fun. You never know what game's going to catch fire like this, but it's already...
I'm waiting for my mom to text me about Palworld. Like, it's going to come like any day.
Yeah. And so the big thing is, obviously, there are some very Pokemon-inspired designs in here, but I hear the comments out there that are also screaming like, it's a survival game. It's a fun survival game. Stop talking about the Pokemon part, please. It's a survival game that we like to play that, yes, has some Pokemon-looking creatures packed in there. But Kelsey, you've probably played the most, and I know you're a big Pokemon fan.
Not much, yeah. But
okay.
I mean, gosh, this is just one of those games where, like, it's so clear that on the internet you cannot have a nuanced take. There's just no... There's just no room for anything to be, not a black and white thing. So I'm going to try to quickly summarize thoughts here. It's a survival game. People are right. It does not play like Pokemon. I am frankly confused by the people who are like, finally, this is what we've always wanted from Pokemon, because it's so little like Pokemon. It has Pokemon elements like dropped on top of a survival game. And so I'm very confused by the people who have been playing Pokemon and expecting a survival game, if this is what they wanted.
And especially if they just want like a more open environment. It's like, well, that's the last two Pokemon games have given you that. Yeah, they've ran like trash, but I mean, it still is a little bit of that freedom that it seems like you're going for.
Well, and I think people liked Arceus for the different flavor it brought to, the whole Pokemon thing. Game Freak has not been putting out well done games lately. It is good for them to feel pressure and have competition. That's basically always good. There are also some designs in here that look, I don't care if things are legal or not. Like, that's going to be settled in court or not settled in court. It does, like, that is up to a judge someday. I don't care if it's legal. Yes. There's some designs that feel real weird, like that just artistically, ethically, not something I feel great about supporting, like it's kind of disappointing that a game that I think otherwise, I'm not, in full disclosure, and I said this in the stream, I'm not into survival games. This is not my genre. I get it. I totally understand. Like, playing something with your friends that just kind of allows for seamless, easy conversation, like that part I 100% get. That's just fun no matter what you're doing. And this game seems totally serviceable in all of that. It's difficult for me to imagine myself getting super into a game where I just have kind of thorny feelings about the artistic direction of it. Like, these are very Pokemon-like models. They are using the same like art style. Obviously the charitable thing is extremely inspired, right? Like, I don't care about the legal. I'm not going to say plagiarism or whatever. But there's some stuff that just feels kind of gross, and that makes it difficult for me to be like all in on something like this, because I'd prefer a version of this that just had more of its own identity for me to not feel a little weird playing it.
Well, I wonder if they're going to shift that direction, because, I mean, the reason I think they would go for... I mean, they got Jeff Keighley on stage to say Pokemon with guns. Like, I think the marketing worked, to have these things that were dangerously close.
I don't know, man. The marketing...
No, but I think at this point, like, maybe it can grow in the future, and like when they introduce more pals, it's like, well, now we don't need that because now we're the biggest game of 2024.
I don't know, man. I really feel like talking about the sales of this game without acknowledging that it's just a game where you can like chop up a Pikachu is like that's it. I
don't think that's it. You haven't played it, Jacob, to be fair.
I
genuinely, Jacob, what do you mean by chop up? Like,
you can kill and eat the pals, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was at my short time with it, I was a little flabbergasted that you actually attack the pals to to throw Pokeballs at them. I guess I should call them something different.
Like Minecraft, but Pokemon.
But just walking up to the first pal I met and like hitting it with a bat a few times, I was like, there's got to be a middleman here. Pokemon does that correctly, where it's like, I'm not hitting these creatures.
it's like what I don't want us to skip here is just like I think it's kind of naive to say like 7 million in 4 days and like, if it didn't have that Pokemon thing, like we'd all be really into it. Like that's there are so many survival, it's like, I think without the Pokemon, this game kind of isn't, it's a survival game of which there are lots, and so like, I don't see this game having a long shelf life and maybe I'll check back at the end of the year. I could be completely wrong on that, but like it seems like this is a novelty game. It is mature, the kids' idea of mature Pokemon, which is what if you could shoot Pokemon with guns and enslave them? It's like it's not mechanically like, oh my gosh, what I've always wanted to do with Pokemon. It is I think Nathan Grayson wrote an article for Aftermath for this. It's like, it's Happy Tree Friends, it's like, what if the cartoon had like super gore and violence, not like what a brilliant subversion of our genre expectations.
Yeah,
that was actually literally the Nathan Grayson's tweet I was going to bring up as the take I resonate with the most, is like, this isn't like actually the adult grown-up version of Pokemon. This is what kids think Pokemon for adults is. And I think the Happy Tree Friends reference is it's spot on. It's just, and I don't know. I don't know if this is going to have staying power or not, because the reality is there's a lot of kids playing it, and the kids are really, really into Roblox, which like has an insane amount of ethical issues that make Palworld look like the most ethically normal game in the whole world. So, I mean, it's going to be up to the kids, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and with this level, 7 million sales, like there are going to be so many kids. Everybody's favorite Pokemon game, I don't know if you've checked, is their first Pokemon game, right? And so I think there's going to be...
Or their second.
Okay.
It's whatever one they played when they were roughly 10.
Yeah, I think you're right. You need to be the same age as Satoshi.
I can confirm through experience that it's definitely the first, because my kid could not be less interested in Scarlet and Violet.
Oh, really? But the
she
point
loves,
is,
what was it, Sword and Shield? She loved those too.
Oh, real Janet style. But I do. There's going to be millions and millions of kids who are going to be playing this game and falling in love with it. This is going to be, I think, it feels like right now, Jacob, this is going to be a juggernaut for the next decade, at least cultural impact. There's going to be a lot of nostalgia for this game for a whole generation. I don't think it's going to be in the critical discussion in a big way for the next 3 years, but I do think like impact on culture achieved just from the first couple of days of sales alone.
MinnMax listeners, write in January 24th, 2034.
I mean, there's something to be said, I think, about the hook of the game, outside of using the word Pokemon, is it is a survival game that gives you the option to automate a lot of the things that aren't fun about survival games with like little bonus creatures.
Yeah.
Yes, that was made very clear when we were streaming yesterday that there's a lot, like you can turn off hunger, you can crank up the XP. Like I don't play enough survival games to know if that's novel, but it's welcome. It's certainly welcome.
I guess what all I'm trying to say is like that is a little bit of a hook beyond Pokemon, is like you can set up factories with cute creatures, which I don't know, we'll see. It will certainly there will be it'll wind down over the coming weeks, but to your point, Ben, I mean, there's gonna be, and Kelsey as well, there's gonna be a group of people who are all in on this thing for an extended period of time.
Millions of people. Yeah. It is kind of
especially when you get your group together and you start building out your community, and it's like, I feel like it'll last longer because of that social element.
I mean, on that note, so they saw that apparently it's more popular than Fortnite is on Xbox. Like, by the way, you could not have a bigger win for Game Pass, in theory, than Palworld. Like, Game Pass day one, they probably paid 14 nickels to get this thing on Game Pass. Like, it is the biggest leap after missing out on Baldur's Gate 3 last year, right? Like, this is it. If this does not convert people to Game Pass in a big way, then like, I don't know what it means for the future Game Pass. But apparently on Xbox, this was more popular than Fortnite. And I do wonder if the impact of this game is going to rob some enthusiasm from Lego Fortnite, which is a game I'm still playing here and there, and I still really like. But like, it feels like some of the same overlap And now this is the sensation when Lego
that.
Fortnite isn't.
I think I can't even predict what is going to happen with this game, honestly. Like, I have no idea. Like, this thing could fall off a cliff in like a month and everyone's over it, or seriously, it could just keep going. Like, Genshin Impact, is such a huge game. And it's like, when Genshin came out, it was like, oh, like Genshin Impact, like, it was pretty big. I was like, oh, maybe it's just like the fad of the time or whatever. And it's like, no, Genshin is like die hard. People are obsessed, and that game has like not really dropped off all that much. Yeah. So. Yep,
for sure. It is funny to hear all these people out there saying, like, oh, Nintendo's going to sue. Nintendo's going to take it down. Nintendo's going to sue. Again, I'll leave it to Haley McLean to be the expert, but it is funny to me, Kyle, because it's like, well, Nintendo doesn't own Pokemon. Like, Nintendo owns a third of Pokemon, and it's Kyle. I'm so thankful. I went back and referenced it because it was a cover story or a feature we did in Game Informer a long time ago, and then you put an article up, I think last year after I bugged you about it.
Yeah, you when I went back to Game Informer, you were like, hey, by the way, can you get this story up on the site? And I was like, that is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, because we went to Game Freak for the first time when Kyle and I went there and talked to Masuda and just said, like, hey, who owns Pokemon? Can you explain this? And he really went on the whiteboard. He'd be like, okay, so it's technically Nintendo and Game Freak and Creatures. They all own a third of Pokemon. And then those three entities created... Yes.
Which creatures? The Pokemon themselves?
Yeah, they're self-owned.
The pals.
Yeah.
Pikachu has like amazing stock options. Like they know, how valuable he is to the company.
Yeah, but then it's a confusing thing because then those three owners then created the Pokemon Company to manage this. So it's like, I don't know if it'd be Nintendo bringing the hammer down, which no doubt they would love to do. But it's like, I don't know how they coordinate for that legal stuff.
This is a lot of, talking out of our butt about Palworld. I wonder if Nintendo, as all this sort of stuff is circulating around it and what it's, Pokemon ripoff, etc. I wonder if Nintendo's just really genuinely more interested in like, how do we get this on Switch? Like, I wonder if that's a bigger priority for them than worrying about the legal ramifications of what it all means. It's like, we want to get a popular game on our platform. That's more important to us than any of this other stuff that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
How long do you guys think this will be in early access?
2 years.
Based on forever, it will never.
I was going to say based on their other games forever, right? Like, and that's not. I don't know, and I don't know. It's not like I have a deep insider knowledge of this company. It's just that's what we know about this is that they've had that Craftopia game in early access for a super long time.
Yeah. Also, set your calendars, everybody, because 2.5 years from now, Palworld trading card game will be announced. And it won't succeed, but it will technically be announced 2.5 years from now.
I like to think that it'll follow the Ark Survival Evolved.
Yep.
The path where they announce 2 and then they delist 1 and they make everyone buy a remaster of 1 and Vin Diesel may or may not be in the sequel.
Oh, number 1 Pal.
Vin Diesel coming to Palworld.
Kyle, thinking about like what Nintendo's thinking, I thought you're going to go the route of like, I wonder if this makes Game Freak and the Pokemon Company go like, maybe getting those Pokemon games on Steam. Maybe there's an extra push to do it now, knowing that there's this hungry of a community out there. And obviously there's a lot of Pokemon-inspired games on Steam already. But like this game can have this big of an impact. If they released some older Pokemon games on there, they could rack up millions of sales. And there was that weird messaging because everyone's always like, well, it's a Nintendo game. You can't do it. But I mean, talking to Game Freak, Masuda explicitly said like, no, there's no contract basis. Like it's really just like a friendly handshake. And that's the reason we only release on Nintendo stuff. Yeah. But legally, there's no reason we can't do it.
I guess we won't make $40 billion.
Right. I mean,
but that's how they roll. I mean, there's so many other opportunities for that all these years. And I mean, and those classic games aren't even on Switch. They're going to come to Switch before they ever come to PC.
That's
right?
Weird to think about. Yeah, I guess so.
Do you guys think they'll add like crafting survival stuff in the next Pokemon? Like, is it going to get that crazy where Pokemon is looking at Palworld?
I mean, Arceus
maybe has one of those modes that everyone dabbles with, but is like, well, we don't ever need this again. Like decorating your dog Pokemon and the sun and moon or whatever. It's like, this was nice to try, but you don't actually have to put this in the next one.
What's been interesting to me is like, I'm drawing parallels here between the way Nintendo has handled Animal Crossing and I guess they're not parallels, but I'm going to compare them real quick. So, Animal Crossing New Horizons was like a really big departure for the series for Animal Crossing, and I personally didn't like it. almost everybody else did. That was clearly like what's in the water, what people are craving. And in the same way that I don't really understand, like I wasn't craving survival stuff out of Pokemon, but clearly some people were. Like, I am curious if this is a matter of like sometimes Nintendo like strikes first and figures out what people are actually craving, even if it's not what the game has historically been like. And sometimes they're like, nah, no way. We're not gonna swing big with a big change like that. And someone else comes in and fills that gap, and then it sells 7 million copies in like 5 days or whatever.
Yeah. God, can you imagine being in Rocksteady right now? Just punching a wall. Like, the answer was Pokemon with guns. We've been busting our asses making Suicide Squad for like a decade, and now this game is just robbing the entire world of oxygen. Good times.
I'm gonna bring up Suicide Squad. Do I got to bring me down?
Oh, sorry. We won't bring it up again. I promise. I promise it won't come up in this episode. Hey, Jacob, do you know how this whole thing operates?
Patreon. Sometimes you can't think of a funny answer.
Patreon. That's right, everybody. Patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. That's how, again, you can jump in at the $2 tier even, unlock a benefit, jump in the Discord. $2 just for 1 month. Jump in, compete in Trivia Tower with Huber, help make more things possible. We can bring in more folks if you jump in there, even at the $2, $5 tier. Love it. Just for 1 month. Try it out. We appreciate it. Patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. And thank you, of course, to some of our bigger supporters. I'm talking about folks like HelloFresh. Huber, you like eating food?
Love eating food.
Do you like fresh food or stale, bad food?
Fresh.
That's what I thought. You talk about it all the time on Easy Allies. Then I'm going to tell you about HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. You can skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And of course, that is why it's America's #1 meal kit. Kyle, list things I'm not good at. What do we got?
Devil May Cry.
Devil May Cry, correct. And the only thing above Devil May Cry is cooking. I'm quite bad at it. Yet, when I have a big bag of HelloFresh, genuinely look forward to it. I feel like I cannot fail. I can feed my family this meal by cooking something great with HelloFresh. So always a treat when it's in the fridge. And they want you to know that whether you're trying to save money, eat better, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. You can say hello to your most delicious year yet with fresh ingredients and chef-crafted recipes at a price you'll like, delivered right to your door. You can go to HelloFresh.com/MinnMaxFree and use code MinnMaxFree for free breakfast for life. Kyle, you go for Devil May Cry for the #1 reference.
I don't know. You really stumped me because I was like, surely I know you well enough to know some real life activity that you're actually bad at.
Only been 13 years of knowing you. I understand.
Fashion.
Yeah, there we go, baby.
There we go.
Hey, actually, that hurt my feelings. Can we go back to Devil May Cry?
Nailed it.
Hey, you can get 1 breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/MinnMaxFree with the promo code MinnMaxFree. Thank you, HelloFresh. And thank you, of course, to our dear friends at I Am 8-Bit. They want you all to know about the Minecraft Dungeons 4 vinyl box set is a better way to put it, available at I Am 8-Bit's wonderful online store. If you want a sweet soundtrack to Minecraft Dungeons, you can check it out. Of course, the album art is awesome. The color of the vinyl itself is awesome because it's an I Am 8-Bit production. So you can check out I Am 8-Bit's wonderful online store, and you can use the promo code Old Gamezine. Old Gamezine. Check out the description for the spelling there, and you can get 10% off of everything in the store that's under $100. It does not apply to pre-orders, just a heads up. But you can check out a ton of great things in I Am 8-Bit's wonderful online store, and you can check out that Minecraft Dungeons vinyl box set as well. And you should help thank I Am 8-Bit by checking out their online store because they are so helpful for MinnMax and in supporting the MinnMax community, because each and every week they ship out a prize to whoever has the best question submitted over there on Patreon. So Huber, your job is, as we go through all these community questions, remember this one is clearly the best. This one made the show better, and then you get to choose it at the end, and then that person wins the World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King vinyl soundtrack, thanks to I Am 8-Bit.
That's a good soundtrack.
They will ship it right to their house. So the world is in your hands, man. Okay, community questions.
Jacob, I've been playing so much of Infinite Wealth that the like purple bar behind you, it's the same color as the enemies that are too difficult for you to fight right now.
Yeah, watch out.
And so I keep getting a little nervous when I look over. I'm like, oh, I better get out of here.
Can't even talk to him. Meanwhile, Kyle has the wimpy ass enemy lighting behind him. It's like if we just would run right through him. It's weird how that works.
I'm just a civilian. I don't have any lighting.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Just go up
We
to me
didn't
and
talk
press
about befriending everyone in Hawaii by just pressing square. And aloha.
And I promised my partner I would ask all of you guys, too, if you ever wave at people again once they are your buddies.
Well, because there are two levels of it. There's friends and buddies. So
yeah,
you got to do
once you're buddies, once you're done. Do you ever wave at them ever again?
Probably would. I don't have that many buddies, to be honest.
He got so mad at me because I stopped waving at people he was like, wow, so you became their best friend and then you just like won't even say hi to them anymore?
They get the idea.
What's wrong with you?
I think that's how it works. Sebastian Apollinario, apologies, writes in. They say, hearing Ben so excited about The Last of Us Part 2 director's commentary track for the remaster made me think, which game would you like to replay with a full director, actor, and or developer commentary? Just actor commentary for me. I don't want to hear from nobody else. I want the most informed hot take.
Another thing you're bad at, Hanson, is hiding your disdain for actors.
They're professionally insincere and I don't care for it. It is, honestly, with all due respect to the wonderful actors in Last of Us Part 2, like I listened to a little bit of that commentary for the cutscenes and I was like, I don't want this. I'd rather have commentary for the gameplay. Like, I don't want to hear just Troy Baker waxing poetic about Joel yet again. It's like, I feel like I've had enough of that and I haven't really sought out. No,
that's always, it's true with movies too. They're like, oh, in this scene I decided to act good. You're like, okay.
I think I got it.
It's like when you interview athletes after a game.
Oh,
like,
brutal.
What was important? They're like, well, we just really wanted it. We scored a lot of points and that was, the offense was good, defense was good.
One game at a time, Kelsey. One game at a time,
For commentary, the ones I go to are like the games I love that like have a really specific point of view, like the Kojima games and like Playdead games and stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I really want more surface there beyond the technical side of things, right?
Yeah.
Like the technical aspect of it would be interesting, but intention from the creators, like I don't know if I really want to know that necessarily. Maybe it depends.
Yeah, I got to think about those games that like are big, could say a lot even about an overall studio or company and haven't really been discussed too much. And I know we all loved like the Breath of the Wild GDC talk, but I think that throughout the entire game, it's big. There'd be a lot of it. I'm sure they could talk about designing every single shrine, every single aspect of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. And so I think that'd be my pick for like, I feel like there's just infinite amount of lessons we could learn about game design from that.
Yeah, I mean the big swing changes, genre switches. I think those would be fun, like Yakuza 7 or like Assassin's Creed Origins. Like it would be fun to hear commentary on like this is why we made this big change. And let's dive into that here. I think that would be fun.
I feel like it would probably be more fun to do it with like an older game. Just have that be like. Here's part of gaming history filled in, that like we didn't know the circumstances of this and now we do. So I don't know, like a smart answer would be like Shenmue or something.
That's what I was gonna say.
Careful, don't say those words around Huber, careful.
That's what I was gonna say.
But
you should play a little game called The Making of Karateka.
Yeah, right. Comes up every week of the show from here on out. We gotta drop a reference to The Making of Karateka.
So cool.
Okay, so Shenmue is the correct answer?
It would be good.
It would be good. Yeah, it's like you want the level of like them being candid to like be like this is why it would just be great to hear like how they thought they could solve the problems of an open world or something. I think that would be the most interesting thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It'd be cool if Naughty Dog went into their own past too. Like, hey, we just brought back the original developers. Let's do commentary track for Crash Bandicoot, that hot Xbox property. But you know what? Let's just do it.
I have like a burning passion and I am obsessed with The Evil Within 2.
Ooh.
Like I really think it's one of the most like underrated games there's ever been. Like I think it's one of the best survival horror games ever made. So I would love it if there was like a full-on deep dive into that.
Did you two plan this ahead of time that Jacob, you would reference Shenmue and then Huber, you would reference Evil Within 2 and you could cross-pollinate on that? I get it.
Who's the Evil Within 2 director?
John Johannes.
Okay, yeah. Blake Hester over Game Informer did a big profile on him and like traveled to Japan and talked to him. And he does talk a little bit about the development of Evil Within 2 and how into the deep end he was thrown. So recommend checking that out.
Okay, this is a stretch, but let me walk you through how my mind is coming back to this. Is John Johannes, I first heard him on the 8-4 Play podcast. And I was thinking about 8-4 as a company, the localization company that Sarah used to work for. I was thinking about them again while playing Yakuza, Like a Dragon, because it's this nerdiest little detail, but I loved it. And I love they made this change. But I don't know if you remember this deep cut, but when they first announced Yakuza Like a Dragon and they showed combat gameplay, the UI, it said like special, attack, guard, and miscellaneous. And I think it was John Ricciardi, who was on the MinnMax show a while ago and used to be Sarah's boss. He works in localization, and he tweeted out like, "Oh, they were so close to that spelling out Sega. Like, if you change it, then you can have it spelled out Sega." And they saw that, and then the localization team changed it to, instead of miscellaneous, to etc., so that the UI in Like a Dragon spells out Sega with all the things.
Wow.
It's just a fun little detail.
So jolly.
Making real changes in the world.
That's right. Improving it one step at a time. Yeah, that's why Twitter rules. Non-binary bomb writes in. They say, "Hi, Huber and company." Hello, we're the company. I've always appreciated. Okay, you're off the hook for this one, Huber. If you don't want to say anything, I totally get it. But he says, "I've always appreciated the relationship MinnMax and Easy Allies share, as it's actually through the allies that I first found MinnMax. It is wild. People always write into the Patreon when, we message all new supporters. They always say, I watch House Hunter Rise with my partner. And then the second thing they say is, I found you when you were a guest on Easy Allies' podcast back in the garage, which was like so long ago, and people still reference that episode. It's really fun. Anyways, they say, what's something you feel like both channels, MinnMax and Easy Allies, have learned from each other? I wanted to answer this because I don't think I kissed his butt enough when we had Jones on the podcast recently, but like before we launched MinnMax, I called up like a couple people from the community, which was a weird thing, but I'm glad I did it, just to be like, hey, what would you want if we were to start a new outlet? And then I called other people who are in the whole Patreon game, and I talked to Blood and I talked to Jones. And like, I went back and looked at those notes today, and like notes from Jones for launching MinnMax is like a page of just like, okay, here's what I recommend, here's what I recommend. And he was so friendly and so open. And like, he was more than anybody else. He's really the one who pushed me, where he's like, look, you should make a clean break from Game Informer. He's like, don't just try and do all the Game Informer stuff again. Don't call it, one of the ideas for the names for MinnMax was like Fun Informer. He's like, don't call it anything like that. Just totally separate beast. Just plot your own course. Because like, if you're always looking backwards, it's just not a great way to grow a company. And I really took that to heart, and I really loved it. And now I see other outlets launching with like a name that's kind of looking backwards a little bit. I'm like, oh, I wish they talked to Jones. Like, but they're more successful than we are. So what the hell do I have to say? But I thought that was really nice. And let me continue to kiss Easy Allies' ass, which everyone should support them on Patreon and listen to the podcast because it's very good.
Go on, please.
Here we go. But I feel like it wasn't until... Because I found Easy Allies because a lot of people were leaving comments for the Game Informer Show podcast back when I hosted, and they're like, this feels like Easy Allies. This feels like Easy Allies. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. I wasn't like a big game trailers person. And then like once I got into it, I was like, oh, these are my people. Absolutely. And specifically like the love on Easy Allies. And I know this is gross, and Jacob, you're welcome to throw a grenade in this conversation at any moment. But like the love of marketing and like publisher messaging, and a lot of it's coming from like Jones, like caring about the right way to stage a reveal trailer. Like that level of like industry dorkitude is like, yes, this is what I want people to talk about. Like if they're passionate about it, right? Like don't go out of your lane for it, but like having people that care about like, I'm trying to remember, just at one point you guys were like, breaking down, okay, this is the best way they could do a gameplay reveal trailer for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And it's like, yes, this is the conversation I like to hear at this point about the games industry.
Yeah, just like trailers, press conferences.
Yeah.
Just the art of that. I love that.
It's fun stuff. Sure. Anyways, did that get too gross, Jacob? Are we okay?
Look, I'm fine with talking about all this stuff.
Good. Thank you.
I just don't want to be like, think of the poor company who didn't get to show us their ad in the right way.
Sure, I get Tom Blackburn writes in and says, hey, MinnMax folks, is it better to have a game series stick with the same director / creative lead or to change them up every single game? Great question.
Bit of both. I think, back to Evil Within.
Yeah.
Fresh take on the Evil Within 2 compared to 1. And then, playing off that as well with Shinji Mikami, like Resident Evil, going from Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and then back to Shinji Mikami with Remake and 4, obviously. I think there's a nice balance of like maybe keeping some of the same director duties, but then also like, having room for other creators and directors to do their own take on it.
I'm with you. I was thinking about Resident Evil as well. It seems like the obvious example because I think, as far as I can tell, every game has a different director except for 4. It went back to the Mikami, the same director as 1. And it is like, if you're the old legend coming back, you're probably feeling more liberated and less precious about keeping things intact. I think that's what can lead to an incredible game like Resident Evil 4. So I don't. And then
or 2018.
For God of War. That's a great example.
Bring that up because it was like the first game directors that I knew about were from those God of War documentaries that were on the discs. And like that original trilogy had 3 different because it was Jaffe and then Barlog and then Stig Asmussen for 3.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was so fascinating to me. And like those games are pretty like, they are similar in a lot of ways. And they're also like very different in other ways. And it's like, those are really interesting. And then Barlog coming back, who was like 2 was my favorite of the original trilogy. So I was like really excited to have him coming back. I think I want more, if there's like a creative director with like a real sense of vision, I think I want them on a bunch of IPs. It's like, I want them to be able to do a bunch of different stuff. And so like, I kind of don't want them locked to one series because it's like, like Kamiya got to make so many different wild games. And if he just made like 6 Bayonettas, I think that would.
Yeah.
I would love to live in a world with 6 Bayonettas, but I'm glad that we got a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, I mean, Metal Gear Solid, we got 7 of those, I guess.
Like 9.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like Metal Gear 1 and 2, and then Solid 1 through 5, right? But there is a consistency of vision among those games that I really appreciate and really love. But it can work both ways, right? Like it works really well for God of War, but and this is like the fear of the fear, quote unquote, of the future for Metal Gear. It's like, it's someone else taking over is just going to change that series in ways that we have not yet come to understand.
No, it's cool.
Like Metal Gear Solid 3 remake is going to be, it's going to feel weird, going in. It's going to feel weird.
Yeah, I mean, just having the consistency of vision is awesome, but at the same time, you're seeing the direct consequences of that, where now Kojima left, and who do you got? Where if it was a Resident Evil situation, it's like, all right, we got the director of Resident Evil 3 to come back, just like to have some name that's out there that has the experience and is ready to go and step up and lead, and like having that talent rotate for the director, like Evil Within 2 example, like we wouldn't have Hi-Fi Rush probably if Mikami was like, well, I'm going to stick around. And then John Johannes didn't get to build up that experience to then lead to Hi-Fi Rush,
Mikami for so long was like, I just want the next generation to step up and surpass us. They need to take the reins. So
yeah,
I love that.
Of course, this question made me think too about Mission Impossible, the ultimate series of jumping between directors. And it's like, wait, we found McQuarrie with 5, and now McQuarrie. And it's like, I love those movies a lot, but a part of me is still like, it's kind of cool if they change it up every time. And he tries to justify it by like, well, we bring in a new composer every time, so it's still a little bit different. But it's like, come on, guys. Ben Shively writes in, and they say, we were so naive. Remember last week on the podcast, the question was, predict the most controversial game of 2024.
I was listening to that podcast and being like, if only they knew they were 5 minutes away from the end.
It turns out it is Palworld. I can't imagine getting around it. Although Ben Shively writes in, they say that they predict it's going to be Silent Hill 2, the remake, which I could see that.
Pick.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be Palworld levels, but certainly there's going to be a lot of discourse about that thing whenever it comes out.
I think Silent Hill 2 is frankly so underplayed and so many people are coming into it fresh that it's going to be like I wonder. Yeah, I'm curious if there will be a lot of like, this is how it used to be, and it was better this way. I don't know.
I feel like it'll be localized to our game's Twitter. You know, that it'll just be it'll be the old heads who are talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Good. Tommy White wrote in. They say, I don't have a question. Then get out of here, Tommy. They say, but maybe this was already mentioned, but I just want to shout out Kelsey Lewin's appearance on the podcast My Perfect Console last year. It's definitely my favorite video game podcast besides MinnMax, so it was great to hear her on there. So go check it out.
Thanks.
There you go. What is that podcast like? There. My Perfect Console?
Yeah, it's I feel like, was that really last year? This feels like it was years ago that I was on that podcast, but it's I don't know. It's a lot of questions that aren't about just building your perfect console, but yeah, it was a very fun time.
Nice. Tokyo Game Life writes in. They say, another Code Recollection, a remake of the 2 original games, came out a few days ago on Switch. And instead of having 2 individual games you select from the menu, it's now merged them into one continuous adventure. Is there one franchise that could benefit from merging the entire franchise into one singular narrative? Even for like a remaster or something. I think it's a really fun idea to think about.
Yakuza, baby.
Oh my God.
500-hour game.
That would be awesome to see.
I would absolutely play that. That sounds fantastic.
And they're about to do it with Max Payne 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yep.
Which is pretty sweet.
What do you want from Max Payne? If they obviously, the passing of the voice actor, do you think they're going to keep Sam Lake then? Or you think that is kind of a 1-2 punch of like, well, we can't have Sam Lake with another voice actor, so we should probably just like mocap the same person at this point?
Yeah, I wonder. Well, because they did change his design, in 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say he was out by 2, so I don't think there was ever. I don't think Sam Lake was ever going to be in, at least not the face of Max Payne.
Oh, I really thought.
You mean Alex Casey? I'm confused.
Look, we're all
the
confused.
Famous detective.
That's
I want like really hardcore destructible environments in that game, like the lobby in the Matrix, like just stuff coming off everywhere. Because Control does that really well too, and Quantum Break.
Yeah, so I could see it for sure.
It's weird talking about the series because Max Payne 3 is Rockstar, but like Max Payne 3 still has some of the best ragdolls I've ever seen in any game. It's like the ragdolls and the like gross, but like the bullet deformation when you like shoot someone, like it's
the body crumbles so realistically, it is insane. Yes,
that's funny because like when you say best ragdolls in games, I think of like Force Unleashed, like most ragdoll, but this is a different thing. Okay.
Like the very first kill in Max Payne 2 is like a ragdoll showcase where you're in this hospital and you kill a guy and he flies back like into the wall and there's like shelves that fall everywhere and like all these jars.
That's really funny.
That's awesome.
I beat Golden Sun officially for the first time like a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
And I took a photo of all my code, which is like 5 pages of like a 20-digit code. And so when Golden Sun came to Switch, Golden Sun 2, they both came out at the same time. I was like, all right, I'm going to enter my code that I got about a year ago on Game Boy Advance into Golden Sun 2, and I'm going to play Golden Sun 2 on my Switch. And that process is so time-consuming and boring because it's like 300 characters, like numbers, letters, and symbols. So what I would love is for Golden Sun 1 and 2 to just be merged into one game that just automatically, it's just, it's like Last of Us Part 2 style where there's just like a middle and you're like, all right, you're switching protagonists now. Don't worry about entering a code. So that's my pick.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people theorize they're going to do this with the Mass Effect trilogy remaster, right? And it's like, they improved one a little bit, but it would have been interesting just to have it as one big chunk thing and then just unify the combat between them. But I wonder if you need that, like the change in combat to make it feel a little bit less repetitive as you're going through these whole things. Like, and again, I would say this last week to be clear, but like I think of Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's like if they got all these games out in this generation, then for PlayStation 6, they're probably going to do the remaster version where it's all these games. Like, would it be cool to unify the combat and like UI across all of them and squeeze them together? Or is part of the charm now the difference between Rebirth and Remake?
Yeah.
Did they ever bundle 13 games into one?
Ooh, no, I don't think so.
I really like Deus Ex a lot.
Yeah.
Like all of them, even not Invisible War so much. But I think like Human Revolution and Mankind Divided would be really cool together.
Yeah.
Because Mankind Divided was like unfinished, kind of. Like there's supposed to be more there. The behind the scenes drama of that game is like really weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you combined both of them, that'd be sweet.
Mankind Divided, Games Unified.
It'd be cool if there was a modern XCOM bundle where when you lost XCOM 1, XCOM 2 just started. Because that's XCOM 2 is like canonically you lost XCOM awesome. 1.
And then the most searched term on the internet that day is how to start XCOM 2 in this bundle because it's not on the main menu. Dusty Beeman writes in, and this is why I like the community. They say, Ben, have you jumped out of a cake yet? And I know what he's talking about. Then he shares a link that apparently on the MinnMax show in May of 2021, I talked about how desperate I was at some point in my life to jump out of a cake. And now we're at a point with MinnMax, it's like, oh, that could be a new show plus option, is just getting a cake big enough for me to technically jump out of with my clothes on, Kyle, you pervert.
No, I'm not interested.
It was a deep pandemic. You're not responsible for the things you said.
We all made mistakes in 2021. I get it. But I mean, let ye who has not dreamt of the day of jumping out of a cake throw the first stone, right? I mean, it would be a better life for all of us if at some point in our life we said surprise and jumped out of a cake, right?
Can people eat the cakes that people jump out of?
Not mine. Mine's going to be arson.
I think they're usually like built around, like you're in something, cake is around it.
They cheat.
Although I will say, I forgot about this, but now that you mentioned it, I think no, I had never thought about jumping out of a giant cake, and then you said it on the show, and I was like, yeah, that does sound kind of fun.
Yes, it does sound fun.
Okay, so new show plus, we each, and it is a little bit cheat, right? We're gonna have like a cardboard box and then make it look like a cake on the outside. And then, so new show plus is us just getting the cakes ready, and on the count of 3, we all jump out of the cake at the same time.
No, you gotta.
It needs to be an event. You gotta be able to eat it.
Yeah, it can't be a cardboard box.
Okay.
The show that you're voting
can jump out of
for.
a box.
The show that you're voting for should be called like just an hour stream of a cake. You know,
right,
there's
no surprises. Yeah,
it's just cake. Just look at
the
cake.
59-minute mark. You will not believe
this cake isn't a lie. Blah blah blah. It would be funny though, knowing our production values. I think it would be a cardboard box with like 2 cans of whipped cream sprayed on the top of it. Like, I don't know, this is a cake. What do you want from us? Leave us alone. Eli Medina, they write in saying, yo, what was the elusive game for you growing up that you just couldn't play for whatever reason? That's a broad question, but I like it. A game you couldn't play as a kid.
Chrono Trigger.
Ooh, that's too adult for you?
I was a Genesis kid. I did not have Super Nintendo. And it was all because of Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat had blood on Sega Genesis. So I had an older brother and we loved Mortal Kombat. So we got Sega, and we had NES before there was no like weird rivalry of like Sega, you know, it was just like we could only afford one and Mortal Kombat had blood on that one. So
do you ever wonder if you'd be a completely different type of gamer these days if you went Super Nintendo over Genesis?
Because that led into Dreamcast and Sega had like Streets of Rage, which is one of my all-time favorites. Right. Dreamcast had so many awesome games, obviously Shenmue. And
God, I wonder if you'd have the job you have if you went Super Nintendo. Like maybe you'd be less passionate about those games, and then that would spiral everything.
Honestly, the whole reason I wanted to get into video games was because I remember being at a supermarket and a magazine had a close-up picture of the hands in Shenmue, and how the hands had like veins in them and how real it was. Yeah. And I was like, yo, I want to like write about this stuff. I want to do that. Oh, so who knows? It's crazy to think about. I never thought about that actually.
My big thing when I was young is I had a Nintendo Power subscription. Yes. And then I also would look at the back of boxes at like, you know, Toys R Us and stuff like that. And the thought in my head would always be like, wow, look at that level. I'm never going to see that. Like it was just this impossible thing, especially in that era of like Super Nintendo and N64, when it was like you'd look at the back and it's like it's the level that's clearly really far into the game. It's like, man, even if I rent this game, I'm never going to be good enough to get that far. Wow, I bet that would be so exciting to make it that far. And I would just have that thought like all the time looking at pictures of video games.
I get it, man.
A big one for me was I would spend a lot of time looking at the computer games at Target. My mom would, go to Target for something, and I'd be set free in the computer games, and I'd just look at the boxes. Fable. Fable had the most appealing CD-ROM box I had ever seen. It had all the promises about what Fable would be, I'm sure many of which were not accurate at all to the game. And it was both, I think it was rated M, but also it was just one of those, like, my family computer would explode if I put this disc in it. I just have no capability of running it. And so it was always just a game where I would kind of think about it and be like, the game where, I don't know, you age in real time and you live out someone's entire life and all the different things that the Fable box promised.
I mean, you had a better Fable experience than anybody who played Fable. No offense to Fable and Fable fans, but like dreaming about what that could have been for years. Look, no doubt it's good. No doubt it's good. But like, can you imagine just dreaming about the possibilities for the rest of your life instead of having it limited by actually playing that freaking game? Like, that's perfect. I can plant a tree.
You never like made an effort to play the remake or anything like that? Fable?
No, because then I learned what it was, and I was like, oh no, thank you. I had a similar thing with Myst, where I saw the Myst box, and I did not realize that it was not a full 3D game. And so I was just like, these are the most beautiful environments I've ever seen. And then if I had got there and realized that it was a slideshow puzzle game, I would have been very disappointed.
I don't know. Like, as somebody who loved Myst back in the day, like, I got it and I was convinced it was the greatest game I've ever seen visually. And even though it was, just kind of glorious JPEGs, like, it still blew my freaking mind.
Just knowing what Myst is and sort of beyond the sort of slideshow element of it, it does kind of feel like a Jacob Ass game. Like, it really it's so dreamy and strange. Like, you should play the VR version where you can actually walk around the environment and stuff like that.
Or you should play that VR.
Principle.
Yeah, probably a better way to go. But they did there's some VR mini golf game where they licensed to have the world of Myst in there, and you can play mini golf in
so
Myst.
Cool.
Which sounds like a better game, to be honest.
I remember Isla telling me about Pissed. What was that again?
Excuse me,
There was like a weird spin-off.
Like a parody.
Yeah.
And it released in the 90s?
That recent parody of...
Oh my gosh, yeah. Released October 1996. A parody of the adventure game.
Is it PYST?
Do you remember the
PYST?
Yes, the Looker, Kyle. I got you. This is a parody of The Witness.
It was like that, yeah. And like Redneck Rampage was kind of one of those too.
Yeah.
It was like a Doom clone, but you're a redneck. Yeah.
Oh, this Pissed box art is awesome. It's just 100% Pissed.
This sounds
I've
great.
heard of it. I've never seen the box art.
Basic concept of Pissed was to show what Myst Island would look like after 4 million people had visited and explored.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's a good premise.
Yeah,
the box says 4 million people have trashed the island. Now it's your turn.
That's I think it'd be fun too. Like, if you're a developer of Myst, like, our game was so successful, now other developers are capitalizing on it in a very Palworld of its era type of way, except what if we're incorporating the sales of the game as punishment for the world of the game? That's the best thing in the world. Okay, hey, natural transition. Travis Fargo says, Huber, is there any chance Suicide Squad will be amazing? What if everything they've shown of it so far was merely a ploy to set people's expectations basement in hell level low, only to release the best looter shooter ever made?
There's always a chance, I say. There's always a chance. That's how I live my life. The odds are definitely stacked against it. I'd say if anything has the potential to be really good, it's the story. Like, the cutscenes we've seen are really good. The previews are like, oh, the story's really good, but then you play it and you just kind of whatever. So I've never been so worried about a game.
All right, when you saw...
But there is a chance.
When you saw the trailer where they revealed that the Joker's coming back, but it's a Joker from the multiverse, he's going to be playable, what's your face? Can you recreate it for us, please? Okay, he's
But
grinning.
then I saw the gameplay and I was like, oh, it actually looks kind of fun, actually. He's got like the weird umbrella and he's like sliding around on it. I was like, all right, he actually looks cool to play as. But I'm so tired of like the multiverse premise.
It feels so gross. And I know I'm too deep in the weeds for this stuff and I'm too much of a dork, but like, I don't want the word multiverse touching the Arkham canon.
Same.
And it's like, well, now Arkham is multiverse. No way to separate those two again. They're all mixed together.
You're 100%.
It's a gross idea. Bob Buell.
We have to have the Joker. It's important.
Oh, Kyle,
Every
WB
single
salesman.
time.
I really appreciate it. My God.
If the Joker's not there, what are we even doing with ourselves?
That's true. Bob Buell writes in, they say, do you feel it in your soul when you're using a computer, you've copied something, but you haven't pasted it yet?
I get nervous.
Yes, me too. I worry I'm going to get distracted and I'm going to lose this fragment of whatever I'm working on forever. It's a weird feeling, especially like editing video, like in the timeline, like, all right, I'm copying and pasting this. If I get distracted, I get a text before I paste it. Maybe I just forget to insert this chunk of the video for the rest of the time.
That's so interesting because I only feel that if you cut rather than copy. Like if you copy and you mess up, it's still there. You can just go copy it again.
Well, I copy it, then delete it, and then I paste it because I like to live dangerously. But Bob says, I was having a discussion with a coworker about this, and we both said we have this strange, indescribable feeling, almost akin to, did I lock the door or did I leave the stove on? In the back of our heads, anytime we copy something but haven't pasted it yet. Like our body is reminding us that this info is floating in the ether and needs to be pasted.
I do think it's weird that, the text is in like a liminal state, where it's like it is neither where it came from nor where it's going. It's just out there.
Yeah, I'm into it, baby.
That's cut though. That's not copy.
Okay,
Like,
well, he phrased the question wrong.
Like if you copy it, like you have a copy liminally, out in the ether or whatever. But like when you cut, that's when it's like I've removed this and I'm holding it in my like little digital hands right now, like a little baby bird.
So you need the copy cut combo to really feel the impact. Yeah.
High stakes.
Well, Pate Rion blew my mind by replying to this comment on Patreon, and they say, by the way, you can press the Windows key plus V to get a list of all the things you recently copied, which I had no idea was a thing, but that really is a game changer. Thank you.
Is there a Mac equivalent to that?
Buy a PC. I don't know. We're really into PCs here, Huber. It's the first thing you got to know about MinnMax. Trent Weber writes in, and they say, as fans of the Oregon Trail, maybe I should have reached out to MinnMax instead of one of my mini hospital visits, because I had typhoid fever a couple of months ago, and I almost died from it due to several misdiagnoses.
Oh my
It's
God.
an infectious disease. An infectious disease doctor had to be called in before they figured it out. I'm all better now, just so you know. But I, like everyone else I've ever talked to, only knew about typhoid fever from the Oregon Trail and thought it did not exist anymore. Yeah, I never would have guessed that exists.
Is this like an anti-vax thing coming back where it's like kids in school are catching typhoid fever because their parents aren't vaccinating
Could
them?
be. But Trent says, are there any things that you thought only existed in video games, but they turned out to be real?
This is maybe embarrassing, but in Assassin's Creed 2, you could meet a plague doctor. And it gives you the history of plague doctors. And I was like, I thought that mask was like just a cool, scary Halloween costume thing. Like, I didn't realize this is like a thing from history.
It is history's greatest costume.
Assassin's Creed 2, that's a real thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect example. Absolutely.
So when I first played Animal Crossing, there was the first one. There were a couple of things like this. So like in the spring, they put a little windsock up, and that's a thing that happens in the spring in Japan a lot. And I had never seen a little like fish-shaped windsock before. So I was like, this is a weird game. This is just a weird thing they do, is like put a fish in the air. And there's a lot of like just very Japanese furniture pieces and stuff that I don't know. I was like, that's creative. And then later was like, oh no, that's just an extremely normal thing in Japan.
Yeah. And the first time I went to Japan, like you go into a McDonald's or any restaurant and every chair is a froggy chair. It's just like the universal furniture over there. It's pretty wild.
They're kind of, this feels like it kind of doesn't count, but like mythical creatures that I thought just a game came up with that then it turns out like are things, I'm thinking about Okami. Like in the game Okami, it's like the big original villain is Orochi, who's like an 8-headed dragon. And it's like, Orochi is just like a myth that's been out there for thousands of years. But like Okami was the first place that I heard about it. And Okami has like several things like that I just thought, this game is super creative, and then I learned the game is creative, but also these are from myth.
With an asterisk.
But not as much as you thought.
Yeah. Huber, your head exploded.
MGS3, Eva's bike says like Triumph on it. I just thought it was like a sick decal, but it's like an actual like motorcycle.
A licensed thing. Yeah. Like, oh, I love Kojima's creativity. It's like, oh, it's just the brain team slapped it in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No one had soap shoes, so I thought that was a Sonic the Hedgehog thing from Sonic Adventure. I didn't know anyone with soap shoes. You know, the like.
You do now, Kelsey. I freaking loved my soap shoes when I was in elementary and middle school.
What are soap shoes?
You could like grind on them.
Oh, okay.
They have like a little divot. Like,
Yeah. Oh God. All right. I can feel those in my hand. I never owned them. I must have felt someone
I was
else's
rocking
shoes.
those LA gears.
I get it.
The lights.
Andrew Burns has a scathing question that you can skip if you want to, everybody. Andrew Burns writes in and they say, what percentage of positive video game reviews end with some variation of, I look forward to playing more of this in the weeks to come? And what percentage of those reviewers do you think actually play more?
Wait, like previews or
reviews? Like it's like, oh, I'm going to keep coming back to this game forever. This sounds great.
Oh, yeah, that percentage is probably pretty low.
I'm going to go with
you burn out on a game when you review it. Yeah.
Higher on Steam. Okay, compared to like professional
Steam
stuff.
They're like not professional reviewers.
Yeah.
Non-professional reviewers probably do keep playing. Yeah.
It is tough because normally it's like, well, game reviewers get too much crap for just following an opinion out there. It's just an opinion, everybody. But as somebody who's never written a game review, I do feel like, this is probably 10%. I feel like that's just something you say if you like a game, but then everyone always overestimates how much time they have in the future for everything. So the idea that people are going to be coming back to this stuff again and again and again, just edit that out.
I'm sure I'm guilty of using that phrase probably a lot.
Yeah.
But I imagine for me, it comes from a place of genuinely like, they've laid an exciting sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, template here. And I am excited to see what they're going to do with it next. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to play it, but I do want to see how it grows and what happens,
Yeah. Super Cerberus writes in, they said the recent conversation around the Last of Us multiplayer game made me think, does anyone else miss the days of tacked on multiplayer modes? Developers using mechanics from the campaign in creative ways to make an online component led to a lot of unexpected gems, even if it felt like an obligation from the publisher in many cases. I had hours of fun playing online in Mass Effect 3, Uncharted 3, God of War Ascension, and The Last of Us back in the day, and there's really no equivalent to those kinds of cool, bespoke multiplayer modes in AAA games anymore. I do like this take. Like everyone
sometimes I miss them.
Yeah, because everyone at the time was just like, oh my God, I understand the publisher demands, they're tacking this on. Who's playing the multiplayer game in Arkham Origins or Dead Space 2, But then it's like, there were people that tried that and probably liked it, and it's probably a good experience for the developers as well, just to get some more experience in that arena.
It's insane to think that people thought The Last of Us Factions was kind of tacked on. Like I know so many people who just completely disregarded factions for The Last of Us. A lot of people.
I feel like this is like a lot of nostalgic questions. This is also like yearning for a different time period where it's like those eras did not have, I think, quite the ubiquitous multiplayers that we have now. It's like obviously Call of Duty, FIFA, still had like huge online communities, but I think there was more space for people to be like, hey, I just bought BioShock. I'm going to get my money's worth out of this by trying the multiplayer. And I think they would just not get played even if they were included now. Yeah. Because everyone has the multiplayer shooter they go back to in a way that did not quite exist at that time.
Yeah. That's good. I also feel like too, if a game is going to do it, they would just make their own little spin-off version of it instead of like tacking it on to the main game, maybe.
Yeah.
Or
just have like a separate product.
Yeah, I'm wondering. It'd be cool. I don't know who would ever do it, but it'd be interesting. Maybe everybody's sick of these things by now with Sony's releases, but the idea of just kind of roguelikes as DLCs. It'd be interesting to have people go back and make roguelikes out of like older games, but like using the older game assets, like all the games that had like just, waves of enemies like horde mode or horde mode from Saints Row. Yeah. Or like, let's go back to BioShock Infinite because they added that like roguelike DLC, the cloud, whatever it's called, Battle in the Clouds. Like, could you make the roguelike version of BioShock Infinite now? Like people would be into it just on a weird nostalgic level. But then again, those developers jumping back into that code, I'm sure they'd want to jump out a window. So who knows? Patrick G writes in to say, hey, everyone, I saw Lily Gladstone, the actress for Killer of the Flower Moon, made a post in 2017 about how her high school superlative being most likely to win an Oscar. And she is the favorite this year, so it's a fun full circle for her. Did any of you all have a senior superlative? I never heard it described. Is that a common phrase? Does everyone know what they're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just always knew it was the most likely thing to. And if so, did you achieve your senior superlative?
I didn't have one through like a yearbook, but I had a history class where the teacher just gave all of us like individual ones.
Yeah.
And mine, which my parents are cleaning out my childhood bedroom, and so I found the other day, was most likely to speak at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Which for me in like 11th grade, I was like, hell yeah.
Was that like? I'm trying to think of the timeline. Is that like after Colbert?
It's after Colbert. Colbert was in like 2004. It was probably around. Gosh, I don't know. But it was like they were still, they were still kind of funny because it was during like the Obama administration and not like,
Dude, I still love those. Like, that is my favorite thing is White House Correspondents' Dinners. I adore them. And speaking of Colbert's, like, that was such a big deal. I remember I bought Colbert's first book. And speaking of developer commentary, he had the entire script for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and then he made like his own notes and like critiqued his own speech, which is such a cool angle for it.
Was that I Am America and So Can You?
Of course.
I owned it as well.
Yeah.
And Democracy in Action, Jon Stewart's one. You see why I was voted to win this.
I see. I totally get it. Yeah. Do you remember in I think it's Democracy in Action, the Daily Show book, but there's one page where it was pin the clothes on the Supreme Court justices. Yes. And it was like cut out clothes and you like put it over like the naked versions of just like full frontal nudity for the Supreme Court justice. I just remember opening that page like, Jesus Christ. Those were great books. Okay, yeah, senior superlative. That's very impressive. I didn't get one in the yearbook. Because how did it work? Not everyone gets one in the yearbook. Just some people did for like winning awards. From
my high school. Like I wasn't known enough within my high school to be eligible or voted for one, so I didn't get one.
But it was like the awards show for your entire high school experience in a way. Like if you were nominated for this thing.
Here's the 10 people who mattered.
Right.
You're not one of them. Sorry.
But so pretty much. I remember I didn't get anything in the yearbook, but we had like a school newspaper, and in the newspaper's version, I won funniest person in the class, and it was highlight of my life. It was one of those things where I was like,
that's cool.
But it was but to be fair, they had like funniest guy and funniest girl in there because obviously they can't compete against each other. That's not fair. So I remember just having, it was a nice bond too with like Kayla Powers in my grade to be like, hey, it's us. We did it. All that blathering on paid off. But
you keep in touch? Could that be a new show plus?
I actually, yeah. Pop quiz. Are you still funny, Kayla? Is the name of the show.
Are you still funny?
She was very funny. Kelsey, you got one?
Yeah, I was voted most artistic, which is very funny because I do so nothing with art anymore. Like I don't publicly do anything artistic really. I think the Little Leo book from last year is maybe the most I've done. I was
gonna say, you just drew on a stream not too long ago and the entire internet said, Jesus Christ, you're a really good drawer, Kelsey. Why don't you do this more often? So that counts.
I don't art has never been a thing that I wanted to have a career in. It's just something I like to whip out when I'm feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in high school, it's a lot more relevant because like you're in art class and, and I was taking art electives and stuff at the time. So
I think this is a very timely reference, but I think schools now, they should just take the awards from like GoldenEye matches at the end. It's like Kyle's most cowardly.
Most professional.
Yeah, that's right. I want to see a big list of those. I'm going to read them off.
Most deadly.
This seems inappropriate. Huber, question of the week. What made the show better? Let me refresh your memory a little bit, but you can go any direction you want. The one about the series sticking with the same director, creator, or shaking it up every time. The elusive games from her childhoods. Things you thought only existed. Yeah, games would turn out to be real. What do you think made the show better?
I like that director one.
I do too. Correct choice. Yeah. There we go. Tom Blackburn, congratulations. You just won the World of Warcraft vinyl from I8bit. So thanks so much. And thanks to everybody else who wrote in. Better luck next week. Now it's time for something that we call Get a Load of This. All right, here we go, everybody. I have a nice, simple, dumb, breezy one. Get a load of this. There was on the Blank Check, my favorite podcast. I'm too obsessed with it. I understand that, like most of us are. But on the Blank Check podcast subreddit, they pinned a tweet from somebody named Mick Ribb. And the tweet said, there's probably like 8 Spielberg movies with such great titles that you could put Indiana Jones and the ahead of them, and they'd already be better names than the Dial of Destiny or the Great Circle. So the entire subreddit thread is just people trying to like test that hypothesis, which is very fun.
War Horse.
Yeah,
Indiana Jones and the Bridge of Spies.
That sounds freaking sweet. Just like a super localized, like this is one bridge that Indiana Jones has to deal with.
Indiana Jones and the Fablemans, finally.
But it is
Indiana Jones and Ready Player One.
No, it's the one that doesn't work. Actually.
Okay, they're not all good.
No, Indiana Jones and the Duel is pretty sweet. Indiana Jones and the Empire of the Sun feels like it probably could just be an Indiana Jones movie.
Is that a Tintin book?
Somebody wrote, "Catch Me If You Can, Indiana Jones."
And Tintin.
Yes, there we go. That's one too. And the winner in my mind, and I can't stop thinking about it, somebody wrote Indiana Jones and the Color Purple, which is a sweet movie that I would like to watch. Just a weird abstract conceptual thing. It's him falling into his own brain.
I got a quick one. This is one to shout out, links below in the description because it's a YouTube video to go watch. It's short. It's like a minute and a half, and it's from this account called Parametric Avocado. And it's a little hard to describe, so forgive me. But if you can imagine someone speed running the original Metal Gear Solid, they basically took a bunch of assets from Metal Gear Solid and did their own animations. And they made this like a minute and a half short of Snake ripping through Shadow Moses at full speed and like completing every objective and like taking out bosses in one hit. And it's really fun and silly. And Snake just has this like funny jaunt as he's just going through like Shadow Moses, like throwing grenades over his shoulder and like killing bosses. It's really cool. And I saw it on TikTok originally, and it just like captured my imagination in a fun way. I was like, oh my God, this is for a Metal Gear Solid fan. Like this is really fun to watch.
That's sweet.
Get a load of this. At the Emmys a couple weeks ago, last week, Sarah Snook, who played Shiv on Succession, won, and very deservedly. Afterwards, there was this little like HBO photo booth where she was like posing with the Emmy, and someone said, "This looks like the animation after you win a Smash Bros. Match." And so then someone did the whole thing with like the musical cue and the effects of what it would look like for Sarah Snook to win a Smash Brothers match.
Perfect. There's links below for all this stuff. From the community.
Sorry, that was a beautiful O on Twitter. Did that nice. Just to give them credit.
Yeah. In the same vein, there's a Get a Load of This channel in the MinnMax Discord, which is the greatest news feed and cleanest news feed you could imagine. I love it. And Pseudosis in the community shared a link, which was the Godzilla -1 team. You get to see their raw reaction to when they were nominated for a VFX Oscar, and it is so sweet just to see them. They feel like the ultimate underdogs, ironically for a huge Godzilla, but they just lose their minds when they see it. It's always fun to watch those videos. There's a link below for that.
Get a load of this. There is a YouTube video from the ZZAZZ glitch called Dumping the ROM of a GBA game by crashing it. And he explains it pretty technically well in the video. It's a pretty short video. Basically, if you crash a game, it starts emitting some sounds. If you turn those sounds back into bytes, that's just the ROM. You can just put that back in and get the entire Game Boy game through the crash sounds. So there's a really good comment on this to explain this a little bit better. From Kona Kabitseru, who says, this whole thing feels like watching someone reproduce a perfect replica of the food they ate via throwing it out.
Yeah, that's perfect. Do you got one, Huber?
Yeah, get a load of this. I heard Ben Hansen doesn't like Doom.
Oh, hang on. Whoa. That was an off-the-record conversation, Huber. That's not cool. Yeah, we went and got some drinks and dinner in L.A. with Janet and Huber because I was there for an event. And yeah, I think we were talking. I don't know how it came up. Like,
I'm losing sleep over this, dude.
To be clear, we've talked about it before. I respect the hell out of Doom. Any game that is just well, look, I know this is simplistic, but just games that focus on gore, like, isn't it sweet? And I know this is your cup of tea, Huber, so forgive me, but games like, oh, rip and tear, sweet, rip his head open, this is the best. Like, that has never interested me at all, except for Mortal Kombat story modes. I love a lot. But if I could
Fatalities.
but if I could turn gore off, I would. I understand that's sacrilegious for Mortal Kombat, but yeah, so I think we're talking about that over dinner, and Janet's like, you need to say this crap on the podcast more. People think you just love everything. You gotta say what you don't like, but yeah, Doom.
I'm sorry to call you out. No, I'm losing sleep over this.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I love it. Let's see. That is it for this episode of the MinnMax Show. Huber, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Trivia Tower coming up Monday, the 29th at 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. So if you want to jump in and compete in game trivia and help support Huber hosting Trivia Tower, you can jump in at the $2 tier, patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 wins. Anything without revealing anything you want to tease or talk about with Trivia Tower, Huber? It's a tough one, right?
It's going to be chaotic jolliness.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Now, again, last time Bossman was the co-host, like guest co-host, he came up with like 5 different categories, and a lot of them were very good. And so, like, was he as creatively inputative this time around?
He did have some, and we're going to use one of his creations for one of the rounds.
Okay, the rest were unusable?
Not unusable, but I was I wasn't as into them. No, yeah. Well, just because I had already like kind of started a lot of the groundwork on.
Yep.
A lot of the OG.
Got to build it up. I totally get it. So,
but then one of them was like too good to pass up. I really like it.
That's sweet. And if you support us on Patreon, you can also unlock Bonus Pod at the $5 tier. That is the weekly extra show hosted by Haley McLean. She calls it the companion show to the MinnMax Show. It's like, oh, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And this week's episode is a great one to jump in on because it's Haley, who's a video game IP lawyer, unpacking the state of Palworld, misconceptions about fair use, all that fun stuff. And then also Charles Hart, the associate editor from Game Informer, is going to be helping out with some video production stuff here at MinnMax in 2024. He's on the episode as well because he reviewed the Apollo Justice trilogy. And so if you want to hear a big review discussion about Apollo Justice and Ace Attorney and all that fun stuff, you can check out Bonus Pod for that full discussion. But again, it's fun to have Haley, the lawyer, just really leaning into her element in this one episode. But Kyle, you have something you want to plug?
Oh yeah, just a quick Game Informer plug. We're giving away a pair of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Gold issues.
Sweet.
So there's a story on the site. We're soliciting like feedback, like the letters and messages we get that go in the magazine.
Yeah.
Like we're looking for that. So like there's a forum, there's a story on the site, and over like in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not sure the exact date, it'll be on the story. I'll grab 2 random folks to send gold Game Informer Gold issues to, which are like the higher quality magazine that we really only do giveaways and charity auctions is like the only way we give those away.
And they go for like $800 during that charity auction. So getting a Rebirth issue just by submitting comments into a magazine. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, let's check it out.
And Huber, I don't want to tell you what to do with your life, but if you've never been in a Game Informer magazine, it's kind of a cool idea that you can just send an email to feedback and you could technically be printed in a Game Informer magazine.
That is awesome.
It's a cool idea.
I've read Game Informer for a very long time.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, hey, Huber, thanks again for joining us. Anything you want to plug other than Easy Allies podcast and the Patreon over there? But you can go into more detail than I can about it.
Just Trivia Tower Monday. Come on in, hop over, whatever.
There we go. Check it out. You can hear more of Huber, obviously, on the Easy Allies podcast and all the other shows they got going on over there. But thank you to everybody for watching, listening. Especially thank you to everybody at the $50 tier, the Game Champion tier. You can choose any game under the sun. We declare you the champion. And thewholehamdamily is the champion of Super Smash Bros. Melee. Bold choice. Michael Berry is the champion of Tokyo Jungle. The champion of Freedom Fighter is RabidLime. And Joshua Ayers is the champion of Marvel's Midnight Suns, and TrampolineTales is the champion of the game Luck Be a Landlord. And just one more because it's really fun. Jake Standley, they are officially, don't forget this, the champion of Hell's Kitchen, the game for the Wii based on the TV show. So no one else claimed that one. That is Jake Standley's. All right, that's it. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks again, Huber. Until next time, be good, have fun, let's go.